The end times are here. Well, at least that's what people have been saying for the last, 5,000 years. But eventually somebody has to be right. I mean, look, in the past decade, we've seen increasing natural disasters, more wars and conflicts, plagues and diseases, and many other signs that we might be in the last of days. And religious folks all over the world, they're convinced that we are in the end times. But what are the religious prophecies? Well, today, we're breaking them all down. I've gone through and I've found every major religion's end time prophecy, and we're explaining the whole thing. We're going through how they're all connected and how you can ultimately survive the impending apocalypse. I mean, whether we see the beasts and dragons from the book of Revelation, or the Dajjal and the Yajooj and Majooj from the Muslim tradition, or maybe if the Hindus are right and Kalki comes back and rebirths the universe into a new yuga, or maybe if they're all right and we get some type of crazy final crossover religion episode. Who knows? But today, we're gonna figure it out. So, sit back, relax, and welcome to camp. Welcome back, everybody, to camp, rituals, or tent talk, or whatever we call this. I don't know. We still haven't really zeroed in on a name. But this is the show where I explain some of the most fascinating, controversial, and interesting topics from around the world to my dumbest friends. And today, oh boy, we got a real dummy in the chair. Take a look at this guy.
Okay.
So this is a real piece of work. This is my friend Joey Avery, guys. Give it up for him. Don't be afraid to cheer at home or whatever you'd like to do. What's up?
Well, what a great, introduction. Usually you come on a podcast and people are like, he's a great comedian or whatever. No, this guy's
I didn't say you weren't.
I'm a good idiot. I'm excited, dude. This is going to be fun.
Here's the beauty is that we're all idiots, okay? Because you might be dumb, but I am by far, on this topic, I am much, much dumber. I basically got interested in this idea of the end times, the world ending, because obviously we hear people talk about this a lot. It pops up on my YouTube all the time where it's like, is the end of the world imminent? It's 5 signs that the world is ending. People keep on talking about this. You hear it all the time, specifically within Christianity, but apparently this happens amongst basically every religion, basically since the beginning of time.
It also makes a great thumbnail.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I would never do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine what the thumbnail for this is going to be. 666. Why the world is going to end right now.
Yeah. So I've been found out, but I have done my homework. So I've been fascinated by this idea, and furthermore, I grew up Catholic, okay? I'm not going to shy away from that, okay? I'm actually quite proud of it. Shout out to all the Catholics listening. But I was like, I understand the Catholic/Christian tradition for end times, but I was like, what do Muslims believe? What do Jews believe? What do Hindus believe? They don't even have death. How does that work? It was like my mind was blown. And the thing that I love about this topic is that if you understand 5 of the major religions' end time, stories, prophecies, you basically can connect with every single human being on the planet, and all of a sudden 8 billion people just very easily narrows down. It's pretty interesting. Okay, all of India generally believes this idea about end of times, and it kind of influences how they live their life on Earth. I was like, oh, this is actually an interesting framework to sort of compartmentalize and sort of, not to be reductive, but kind of organize people in a simple way.
This is perfect for me because I didn't grow up religious at all.
Really?
So I actually did not know that everyone had a plan for the end of the earth.
I mean, pretty much. So that is a general fundamental idea behind a life philosophy, specifically a religion. It's where did we come from? Why are we here? And where are we going?
Right.
These are the 3 questions that every sort of organized faith kind of has to answer, more or less. And so if you grew up in a agnostic tradition, you'd be like, I don't know where we came from. I don't know why we're here, and I don't know where we're going.
And and neither do you.
Yeah,
is the main addition.
Yeah, that's
I also don't think you know.
Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable. That's a pretty reasonable point. So, there's an atheistic idea about the end of the world. Where there's a
was that more scientific?
Yeah, right. There's a heat death of the universe, and things just sort of explode in a billion years.
Yeah,
that's possible. We freeze over. So that's one. It's kind of not very sexy. It's pretty interesting, but that's just kind of what it is. But today I want to go through specifically the religious ones. Again, growing up in a large organized religion myself, this is of supreme importance. Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry to interrupt this amazing program, but I need a little bit of help. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can probably see our subscriber number right down here. And if you're able to, it would mean the world if you could subscribe. That is the best way to support this show, because when you subscribe, I'm able to show it to potential guests or to different brands and stuff like that. And it really, really helps grow the show, get us cooler guests, have cooler conversations, and it helps everything so, so much. So if you don't mind, thank you so much. Let's get back to it. What we're talking about is a thing called eschatology. This is the study of end times. Every religion, more or less, has a version of eschatology. Again, means basically like last. Like, it comes from Greek. Escha meaning last, ology meaning fucking whatever the ology means.
Yeah.
And this is like the study of the end times, okay? Every religion's got it. And basically, ever since the beginning of written civilization, we're talking like, I don't know, 3500 BC, all of our written records, basically from that year until today, people have been saying the world's going to end. Off rip. Everyone's got a story about how the world is ending. Everyone thinks it's happening immediately. And there's always been concern about the world ending. And someone's going to be right.
It's going to end.
That's what I'm saying.
Everything that's alive will die.
That's right.
The earth is one of those things. But it's kind of like how I have ideas about how I'm going to die. Doesn't mean I'm right, just because, you can walk around being like, oh, I'm going to get cancer or whatever. You don't know until it happens.
If you do say you're going to die, you're basically guaranteed to nail it.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it seems like everyone's kind of like, yo, the world's going to end.
Yeah. And I know why, and that's why you should listen to me.
There you go. So I want to go through all of them, and it's actually interesting how so many of them tie together, and they all kind of have like through lines and connections with each other. And then I even want to try at the very end of this, after we go through all of them, to try to come up with a world where all of them are right. And it's not as hard as you might think. I think we can potentially say all of them do happen, and here's how they happen. Let's say all the prophecies of the end times from every disparate religion is true. There's a chance they could work.
Okay.
But we got to work it out.
I could even see, obviously we haven't done any of this yet, but I could even see the scientific concept fitting in with all of those, because it's like the world will end. They're just going to say, here's why it happened.
There you go. I mean, the Big Bang was created by a Catholic priest. The Big Bang Theory. Not the TV show, but the actual scientific philosophy.
Catholic priest, what's he banging? You know what I mean?
Nah, he did make Young Sheldon. He was like, we got to make that. He's like, bazinga. Anyway, so it actually, so it kind of is compatible where you're like, God said, let there be light. Bang. Huge explosion. The universe is created. The author of science and religion, he's not going to be at odds with each other. He's going to work in compatibility. Yeah. A lot of people have been saying the world's going to end. This guy, William Miller, 1831, he led these people called the Millerites. He was one of these big proponents. He basically did all these calculations and was like, all right, October 22nd, 1844, the world is ending. He based it off of a chapter in the book of Daniel, which is in the Bible, which is basically says like 2,300 evenings, the world will end and the sanctuary will be cleansed. And he was able to calculate that from like when this happened, something, and basically was like October 22nd, the world is ending. Mad people, like 100,000 people across the United States got these pamphlets and like congregated. So specifically with him, where he met up, like this is in the Northeast, thousands of people congregated ready for Jesus to return.
Yeah.
The day became known as the Great Disappointment, which is also what Joey calls the first time he had sex.
Okay.
And that is an actual...
That's in the episode for this week.
Okay.
Thanks for
that
coming.
is an actual fact about history. It's pretty crazy.
I love this. I love this concept because I feel like this is just how any of these things work. If you make a claim that's that bold and you're that certain, most people will say you're crazy and most people will be right. But there's enough people that would be like, I don't know.
Let's see.
He said it.
I'm of the camp of let's see.
Yeah.
I'll read a conspiracy and it's like, hey guys, I think in the next 2 days, some wild shit is going to happen. Like just save this post because it's going down.
Yeah.
And I'm not the guy that's like, oh, this guy's crazy. I'm the guy that's like, well, I'll save it.
Yeah.
Just see.
But this is like me when I bet on sports, dude. Like I'll be putting together a parlay, drunk on a Saturday night looking at 6 NFL games going, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it's
dude.
possible all 6 of those hit.
I think the Jags are pulling it off this year. The Jags are pulling it off.
It's $100. We could make $7,000 right now.
That's kind of what he did.
You just kind of go, hey, who knows? What if I'm right?
What's crazy is that a lot of people left and they ended up joining a different organization where they started worshiping this woman. Ugh. Mother Ann Lee. They joined this thing called the Shakers. And this woman's hilarious. I only bring her up because this is the depiction of her that they use.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, Megamind.
Oh, my 5-head.
So they start.
We've all met a few girls like that. That's okay. You know?
Yeah, you put down a couple Stellas, all of a sudden she
God.
starts looking pretty hot.
Damn.
So a bunch of people like went to the Great
Big
Disappointment.
target. You know what I mean? Just,
Oh, yeah.
Splash zone.
Yeah, Shamu, baby. They literally were at the Great Disappointment, and then immediately they joined the Shakers and started worshiping Mother Ann Lee.
Why?
Because they're like, oh, this woman,
She gets it.
she's the real one.
I love when people get burned by a false prophet, and then they're like, clearly we just had the wrong one.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I was talking to this dude that infiltrated a doomsday cult, and he was like, they said that the world was going to end multiple times, and every time that it didn't end, they would lose like 10% of people. But the 90% that stayed were more devout. And he would tell them, hey,
Here's why we got it wrong. We were just,
this is why we got it wrong, and this is God testing you.
yeah.
And they became more embedded. But this is a
This
specific.
is why it's so hard to change people's minds. I mean, this cuts across like politics, like everything.
It's insane.
Yeah.
There's more. Remember 2000, Y2K? People thought the
yeah.
world was going to end there. The Mayan apocalypse, 2012. The world did not end. Halley's Comet, 1910. People were
And
like,
for some people,
what happened?
didn't some people like drink Kool-Aid and die with that comment? I think they did.
I don't know, actually. I got to look into that.
Some people, I think, because they thought it was going to go down, ended up killing themselves. So
Really?
in that sense,
I didn't read that.
those people were right.
That is a
the
good
world
point.
did end for them.
I mean, it's like the Heaven's Gate
I
cult.
could also be totally wrong.
The Heaven's Gate people?
The original Kool-Aid folks, right?
Yeah, I mean, they kill themselves and they nailed it.
Yeah.
What do you mean Kool-Aid, folks?
That's what I was...
Sounds racial. Sounds very racial the way you said that.
Not what I meant, folks.
Not those Kool-Aid folks.
Okay.
I get it.
Oh, yeah.
Stealing a lot of Kool-Aid jobs in this country. Anyway, that's racial.
Was that a Trump reference? What is a Kool-Aid job, sir?
Just look at the data. Halley's Comet, 1910. Basically, people were like, Halley's Comet's coming back around. It's going to destroy the world. A lot of people, specifically in like the new era, since like the 1900s, a lot of end time prophecies are all built around like astrological collision. Mm-hmm. More like astronomical collision. Basically, this is like, oh, a comet's going to hit Earth, or like this great meteor is going to crush into the planet. Like it's become like a real point of contention since like the turn of the 20th century. People are like, this is what's happening.
Because it has happened.
But they're like, this is how it's going to really go down. So this comet thing really freaked a lot of people out. Apparently, a religious group in Oklahoma tried to sacrifice a virgin to ward off the impending disaster, but they were stopped by the police, according to a news report that I read.
God
in
damn.
1910.
Was the virgin a guy or a girl?
I'm
Like
assuming
they always go girl.
right, but it's
Which is
like
rude. They don't just take some like school shooter incel who just like can't get it done.
Get
and
rid
they're
of
like,
him.
Let's just get rid of him.
yeah, they're
They
both
never
virgins.
do that.
Yeah.
Right. Male virginity it doesn't seem as valuable.
I always wonder if they like ever sacrificed a virgin and hoping that like something bad didn't happen. And then the bad thing happened anyway, and they were like, oh, "Damn, she was a whore."
Got rid of 100%. Not only was she a slut, she's a liar.
God, now we're fucking
now
getting
we're really
invaded.
fucked.
Fuck. The only time
That's how we do things. You know,
Yeah.
just fuck up, blame the woman, keep it moving.
right as
Yeah.
things should be. This is there's two more that are crazy. Like 1666, they had a really good point. 1666. Again, this is the year that has 666 in it, the mark of the beast, which we'll discuss.
Yeah.
The bubonic plague kills 100,000 people.
You got to think we're cooking at this point.
In England specifically, and then the Great London Fire destroys all of London, basically. Happens in 1666.
Yeah.
Those people, if they're like, it's the end of the world, I'd be like, yeah, you are completely justified in thinking
Yeah.
that. Like, that's a completely reasonable thing to think.
Yeah, for some people, they're watching the world literally burn around them while they're dying of a strange disease during the devil's year and feeling it. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is it. This is hell.
Hellfire, plague,
Yeah.
the devil's year. Yeah, this all checks out.
I always feel like heaven and hell are actual concepts that exist concurrently within people as they're alive.
It's very Buddhist.
Is it?
That is a Buddhist philosophy.
Good.
Which we'll discuss
I will always end up backing my ass into some Buddhist philosophy on accident. I'll just like figure it out myself.
Yeah, some real tech
I'll just see
bro
some
bullshit.
dude puking after a night out, and I'm like, that is hell on
Yeah,
earth. dude.
exactly. Your favorite band, Nirvana. See, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
This is maybe my favorite one and the last one before we really get into this, all right? There's a woman named the Witch of Yorkshire, 1806. She had a bunch of followers, and she was a part of this greater group of what they call Southcottians. Okay, this girl, Joanna Southcott, she was like the leader of the whole thing. But this woman, Mary Bateman, all of a sudden was like, my egg is laying, or my hen that I have is laying eggs that have prophecies written on them. On the egg is etched into the actual hard shell of the egg, and it says, Christ is coming. She had many of these eggs that were laid, and she actually told a bunch of people in the city. She like told like judges and mayors, and she was like, guys, this is insane. Like this, I think we have a divine hen. She ended up charging people a penny just to see the eggs. And ultimately the hen was taken from her, confiscated by local authorities, and then no more prophetic eggs were laid.
Not surprising.
They later found out that she had written on the eggs using ink, and then that,
I was going to say, is she just the woman who invented the pen?
Yeah, and reinserted the eggs back into the hen's oviduct.
That's so rude.
Right?
Just fisting his hen with
the hen's like, I just
eggs.
Got rid of that. I don't need it back in
Is
here.
that the origin of the Easter egg?
That is where it comes from.
That might be why we've been painting on eggs this whole time.
A little message on an egg?
Yeah.
She later murdered someone and then was sentenced to death. Strips of her skin were tanned into leather and sold as magic charms to ward off evil spirits. The tip of her tongue was collected by the governor of a local prison, and 2 books were wrapped in her skin, but they were later lost. So,
that is a crazy stat line right there.
Interesting.
Everyone is basically like, yo, this chick is into some occult shit. She's being weird. She needs to calm down. Let's kill her and use her skin for magic.
Yeah.
Now this makes a lot more sense.
1800s were a weird time, dude.
Sounds kind of lit, actually.
I have great news, by the way.
Yeah.
We have 2 big prophecies coming up in the next couple years for the end times. Famous mathematician Heinz von Forster. Definitely just a normal German guy that didn't do anything weird. I haven't looked into that, but his name is Heinz von Forster, and he did this prophecy in the 1960s. He's a brilliant mathematician for all intents and purposes. It's just a very genius guy, and he says that the
Good
world...
at coming to the final solution.
We have to look into that. You can't just call people Nazis, all right? Not all Germans, but many. He says that the world will end by Friday, November 13th, 2026. He predicted this back in the 1960s.
Oh, but it's Friday the 13th.
Yep, Friday the 13th, November.
See, he's being goofy with it. I mean, did he use math to arrive at this?
He did use math to arrive at this.
In what sense?
He said that there were 2.7 billion people in 1960, and by looking at the exponential growth of humanity throughout the years, it's almost certain that the human population will be infinite by 2026, and so everyone will be dead.
Well, he got that a little wrong. It's not feeling all that infinite. He's forgetting about like fucking cancer and the shit that we do to ourselves
and negative birth rates and yada yada. So
little microplastics turning your jizz gay.
This was 1960. He didn't know where fucking cum was gonna be gay. He didn't know
cum was gonna be gay.
It was the 60s. He didn't know.
Yeah,
He's just a regular German that had no weird ties. And then there's another prophecy coming up. 2026. There's going to be 2 people have said 2026. This is a guy, Riaz Ahmed Gohar Shahi. He basically is from an organization called Messiah International. He believes and he claims that he is
Stop you right there. The organization is called Messiah International.
Nothing weird about that.
Nothing weird about that. What's the org do?
He believes that he's basically the syncretic fulfillment of the Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and Hindu prophecies of end time.
Imagine the smell.
He believes he's the Messiah for every one of these religions, and
for every one of them.
Which goes back to my theory that I think you could tie them all together. He had a secret meeting with Jesus in New Mexico in 1997 and was told that
Jesus
the world...
ain't go to New Mexico.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
He's not doing that.
There's no way. I feel like if you're Jesus, you're like, yo, you can meet me...
We could do Paris. We could do
London.
We could do We could do some roof. We could do Soho maybe, as long as you have a nice kind of spot. I don't see Jesus being like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
let's go to Albuquerque.
No, he chose Albuquerque. He was like, this is remember the poor will inherit the earth. All right, this is a big part of Christian teaching.
Then I'm out.
So we have those to look forward to. But the question remains, what does every religion believe about the end times?
Yeah.
Let's start with Christianity, shall we?
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to kind of talk about this from sort of like a big picture secular sort of view, despite growing up Catholic myself. Let me also just say,
You're not Catholic anymore, though, are you?
of course, what are you talking about? Of course
Are
I'm
you?
Catholic. Yeah, I went to church 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Counts. I go twice a month.
Full Cath, though?
No, I mean, well, sort of.
Do you think that they're right, or do you feel like that it's just because you grew up identifying with it, you think you get valuable things out of it? Like, do you take it kind of literally and feel like it's the correct thing to do, or do you like being a part of it and feel like you get good rewards
I will
back?
say I really enjoyed my time growing up Catholic. I found the academic sort of literature of Catholicism to be like really fulfilling. Like Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica, I thought was like brilliant. I really enjoy reading the Catechism. I was like, the Bible, ancient text. I was like, this is awesome. I love Catholicism. I do believe that you can basically judge a religion based off its fruits, and so I believe all the major religions, specifically,
That's why they get rid of them.
all the major religions that we're talking about today, I think generally are pretty good, and that's why they're still around. They've been around for thousands of years, and the only reason they're able to persist is because they do pretty good stuff. So I think by following any one of these religions, I think you're going to be in generally a pretty good spot, and whoever the God is up there, I think will look upon us,
So you're less
politely.
like, because there are obviously members of each religion that are like, we are fucking right, and you have to be with us to be right. You're
I'm
more
not,
like,
I'm not really on that.
yeah. Oh, so I again, I didn't grow up religious at all. I had none of that. I haven't even read a word of any of the texts that you mentioned. But I have always found, even growing up, secular, agnostic, whatever it is, that in people turning away from religion, there was a lot of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, where it's like, okay, I didn't like certain things about this organized religion, so we've gotten rid of the concept that you should have a structure in your life that emphasizes being a good person, that emphasizes following a moral code, that emphasizes giving back in your community.
That's what I'm saying. I think prayer is good, and if you are an agnostic person that has no one to pray to, then I think meditation is good.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to meditate, then I think you
Have a fap.
Yeah. yeah. Some post-nut clarity, you know? So that was kind of my perspective, more or less. Maybe that changes one day. But as for now, I'm like,
I think it's
generally,
I think it's great.
I think having a relationship with a higher being and, praying and meditating, maybe some type of like abstinence from food or dietary restrictions to kind of, I don't know, like add a little bit of like difficulty into your day. I think too much convenience is probably destructive to the human condition. So all those things.
It's hard to come up with reasons to get rid of it other than like, I'm fat. And then if you're just doing it for...
there's no reason. I think practicing Ramadan is great. Like, I'm going to fast all day, sun up to sundown for 40 days. I mean, that's like, I think a very good exercise in self-control.
Yeah.
So let's start with Christianity.
Let's do it.
Now, every religion, again, I'm just going to couch this in saying, there is no one monolith that is Christianity or Islam or Hinduism. These are ancient religions that have a bunch of different subsets and sects, CTS, sects. And like substrata and denominations within the greater umbrella. So again, we're going to be here all day if we try to break down every little denomination within Christianity and how they view it.
Right.
So I'm going to give sort of like a broad overview. And also, I'm going to get a lot of stuff wrong, okay? I'm not a theologian. I'm not a Bible expert. I'm barely a podcaster. So we're just going to kind of go through this.
I'll let you know if you missed it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, fill in the gaps, okay?
Yeah,
Fill in the gaps for me. Christianity's understanding of the end times comes from all over the Bible, specifically the book of Daniel, Ezekiel, some of the Gospels, but primarily the book of Revelation. Have you heard of the book of Revelation?
I've heard of it.
So,
Not familiar with the full arc.
controversial book. Controversial book. Basically, Martin Luther, one of the reformers, kind of the guy that started.
The king.
You're thinking of Junior Third.
Okay,
Sorry. You're thinking of the black one. I'm talking about the German one.
Okay.
Martin Luther, just the regular German guy, he's one of the reformers. He basically started like Protestantism and like evangelical Christianity.
Yes.
Lutheranism was like the first church he
It was
started.
very controversial at the time.
Big time.
Yeah.
Controversial now, if you ask me. But he tried to remove Revelation from the Bible. John Calvin, another like early reformer of the church, didn't write about Revelation. There were very many church meetings, like early meetings, to decide whether or not it should be in. But alas, it is in the Bible. It was written by this guy named John of Patmos. We're not really sure if this is John the Apostle, the guy that wrote the Gospels, or if this is a completely different John. It doesn't really matter, but I did think it was interesting that we're like, John of Patmos, who's this guy? No one really knows. Basically, he gets sort of like this vision, revelation sort of shown to him. So again, the word apocalypse in the Greek comes from the root word to mean like a revelation or an unveiling. This is like basically apocalyptic literature that is very, very common amongst the Jewish people at this time. So people are aware of this type of literature where it's sort of metaphorical and allegorical and has like all of these crazy symbols and meanings and calls back to other literature and books about a great end, judgment. And that's what Revelation is all about. So this guy, John, basically gets this vision, and the book is pretty wild. If you ever read it, your mind will be blown. You're like, what does any of this mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of Christians that are kind of like, I don't like it. Like, there's a lot of Christians that are like, I don't really want to read it.
Because it feels weird, or because it's hard to make sense of it?
If you don't understand really how to interpret it within the context, it just sort of feels like a fever dream.
Yeah.
Like, it's just crazy. Like, I'll give you just a little taste, okay?
Wet my beak.
So it opens up by basically, Christ coming down. He, has like his eyes are like glowing like fire. His mouth is a sword. His skin is bronze. Like, he looks crazy. He comes down and he's like, hey, here's 7 letters to 7 churches in Asia Minor. And he basically is like admonishing all the churches, telling them the stuff they're doing good, telling them the stuff they're doing bad. And then all of a sudden, John goes up to this throne room where he sees 24 elders and a bunch of thrones, and there's these 7 lamps that are blazing. They possess the 7 spirits of God. And then there's all these different creatures around. The first is a lion. The second is an ox. The third has the face like a man. The fourth is a flying eagle. Each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, even under the wings. So again, this is just part of it where you're like, this is pretty wild. And then they get these 7 scrolls that are sealed up and no one can open them, and everyone's crying. They're like, oh, we can't open it. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, Jesus can open it. But Jesus isn't Jesus.
With his mouth sword.
No, he's a lamb. He's a slain lamb, again, representing symbolically the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. So he comes down and he opens the scrolls, and the scrolls all of a sudden are bringing in crazy things. The first 4 scrolls, as they open, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: conquest, war, famine, death. So each one of these scrolls is just bringing in like the worst things in life ever. It's crazy.
It's what happens when I scroll on my phone.
Literally, yeah. It's just, you want to talk about scrolls. These are, it's all the worst things, all the horsemen just coming out. The 5th seal, he opens up that one. All of a sudden, John sees all the martyrs crying out. And all of a sudden, the 6th seal, there's a massive earthquake. The sun goes black. Stars fall. Mountains and islands are moved. All the living people retreat to their caves. And then the 7th seal introduces 7 trumpets. The trumpets are all bringing destruction. Every time they play the trumpet, there's more and more destruction. And then there's 7 figures that show up at the end of the 7th trumpet. All of a sudden, we're introduced to these like 7 different people. One of them is a dragon. Pretty sick. We got dragons in the Bible. I feel like not a lot of people talk about that.
I was going to say, this book sounds amazing.
It's crazy.
I'm like locked in.
It's like a Led Zeppelin song. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Basically, like, the dragon wants to devour the child. The first figure that we're introduced, I kind of skipped that part, is a pregnant woman with a male child. I interpret this as the Virgin Mary. It seems pretty clear to me. Some people would contest that, sure. The second figure that we're introduced to is this dragon that wants to devour the child. The third is a beast with 7 heads that starts to kill everybody and start to eat all the people on earth. The next beast is what they call the beast of the earth. This is the AntiChrist. This is a false prophet that tells everyone to follow the beast of the sea and wear the mark of the beast. The beast emerges from the earth wearing 2 horns like a lamb, speaking like a dragon. He directs people to make an image of the beast of the sea, and he forces life into it. And he tells all people to bear the mark of the beast, 666. And then the 7th figure then brings upon these 7 bowls. Now, I'm just going to stop right there because all of a sudden we've just gone through some crazy shit.
Yeah, I was seeing that in my head. That was like a Game of Thrones sort of vibes right there.
Crazy. So this is again where it's like if you're reading all this literally, you're like, this is crazy. This is like pretty insane. I'm going to go through all the different interpretations once I even finish this. So we're not far off. At the end of, these 7 figures, all of a sudden we're introduced to the 7 bowls. These 7 bowls, each one gets poured into the earth, and they bring on 7 more awful things. The first bowl is a foul and malignant sore that afflicts the followers of the beast.
Herpes.
Exactly. The sea turns to blood, and then everything in it dies. All the fresh water turns to blood. The sun scorches the earth with intense heat. Total darkness and great pain overcome the beast's kingdom. The river Euphrates dries up. And this is pretty wild. This is where we're getting ready for the final battle at Armageddon. Again, these are all words you've heard. You're like, what is Armageddon?
Yeah.
Interestingly, a lot of people believe that Armageddon comes from the word Har Megiddo. This basically means Mount of Megiddo. This is an actual place that's found in northern Israel today. There's been like many, many wars that have happened there.
I've heard.
Not only in today's time, but in ancient times as well.
Yeah.
Har Megiddo.
Tough neighborhood.
Yeah. No, they've gone through it. That's like the OG Compton. And
yeah, that's what they say.
Then they're saying that is where Armageddon comes from, Har Megiddo. And then the 7th bowl gets poured into the earth, a great earthquake and a hailstorm. And again, just more awful things happen to the earth. And then judgment. Again, this is all put in Revelation in chronological order. Now we face the judgment of the 2 beasts, the dragon and the dead. The beast and the false prophet are cast into a lake of fire. The dragon is imprisoned at the bottom of this pit. Resurrected martyrs come up and live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. So now we have 1,000-year messianic reign. And then at the very end of that, we have the last judgment. Jesus will raise all people from the dead, gather everyone before him. Then he's going to individually judge each person by looking at their actions, feelings, thoughts, words, sins. And you won't be able to hide anything from God. At that point, Jesus will kind of divide everyone into 2 groups, the damned and the saved. And that is basically the end of Judgment Day. All the damned will then be cast into the fires of Hades and hell with Satan, with all the beast, with all the wickedness. And then all the saved will live in the final city, the New Jerusalem. This is basically a new heaven and a new earth to replace, obviously, the old heaven and the old earth. And there's no more suffering or death. God comes to dwell with humanity in the New Jerusalem. It gives like this beautiful description of the New Jerusalem and how awesome it's going to be. The river of life.
Singapore.
It's basically Singapore. Yeah, it's basically like, if you ever played like Mario Kart, it's like the Vancouver one where it's like all glass and everything.
Yeah. Okay, tight.
The river of life and the tree of life appear for the healing of nations and people. The curse of sin is ended.
Wow.
That's basically how the Bible ends.
Wow.
You go through the whole Bible and all of a sudden you read that.
Spoiler alert, by the way, everyone at home.
Yeah, the good guys win.
Yeah, that's the most I've ever wanted to read the Bible. I think
sick.
I probably won't because that was a great description right there. But I was like, I was always, as someone who hasn't read it, I was like, what sorts of tales am I missing out on? That's what I was hoping for. I'm glad that they let now Martin Luther wanted this in, or he didn't.
He wanted it out. Martin Luther had a couple
kind
of books.
Prudish fellow.
He's
not with the fire and brimstone and dragons and the.
Not so much that. I think he wanted to remove a lot of books that talked about like Mary, a lot of things that talked about purgatory, things that he thought maybe. I don't know exactly why he wanted to pull out Revelation, but he pulled out a lot of books that like the Catholic Bible will possess, but the Reformed Protestant Bibles won't possess. These are books known as the Apocrypha. These are where we get the word apocryphal.
I see. So Catholic is the OG.
The one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church.
Certainly, yes. Yeah. The correct.
What's up, Catholic? Key boys, you know what I'm saying? Papacy. Papal boys.
Key boys. So, and then the Protestants, sorry, this is probably dumb, but I just don't know. The Protestants were like, hey, let's fucking clean this up a little bit and have like a nicer version of it. And so they came later, but they've removed stuff. Is that true?
They came later, and the way it sort of manifests in America today, like most Christians in America, I would consider to be Protestant evangelicals. That is like the term I would use. So this would be
most like presidents were Protestant. That's why like it was a big deal that Kennedy was Catholic.
Exactly. Yeah. So like most, obviously because America is a colony of England, there's a lot of, like
not anymore, but yes.
Formerly. There's obviously a lot of like Lutheran Church of England evangelical type Christianity that exists in America. So they don't necessarily subscribe to the Pope. Right. They don't sort of organize under like one specific type of leadership the way Catholics do. They don't necessarily have the same reverence for Mary They view Catholics, I think, as like worshiping Mary, where
Right.
we don't. We honor Mary. And then they don't necessarily believe in the transubstantiation of the Eucharist, which is
in trans at all.
It's basically at church they say this is the body and blood of Christ. Catholics believe that the spirit of those objects is basically imbued with the divinity of Christ and has to be honored as such, whereas Protestants believe it's sort of symbolic. And so I think for me at least, I'm like, yeah, if you like Jesus, then you're pretty much in the club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like when people look at a college campus and they're like, you're all frat bros. And you're like, actually, we're fucking Sigma Chi and we're like better at sports and other thing.
Let me put it this way. Protestants are big on sola scriptura.
Uh-huh.
This is basically the Bible is the truth alone. We don't need to listen to the Pope. The Bible, the words in the Bible is what it's all about. Sola fides, we're saved by faith alone. Mm-hmm. We don't need to do anything to earn God's love. We don't have to be good. We don't have to. If you love God, you will act good, but you don't have to do a certain number of things to get to heaven. You don't have to be like, God, look at all the good things I did.
See, that's funny. I had the exact opposite belief. Where I'm like, I didn't grow up feeling like faith was very important, so I feel like God will look down on me and be like, he's a cool guy. He was doing his thing, and he tried to, he kind of figured I was out there and was trying to be chill about it.
You might be right.
I might be.
So that's some of the distinctions. But all that to say, part of the reason why I think like Reformed Christians love Revelation, or not necessarily love it, but look at it very specifically, is because there's a bunch of different interpretations. There's one interpretation that's very like symbolic. There's another interpretation that's very literal. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain subset of Christianity that doesn't like when you get a little too symbolic and metaphorical with the Bible. Because they think like, whoa. The Bible is without error, which basically every Christian believes. But once all of a sudden you start being like, oh, this is metaphorical, and this is metaphorical, and this is metaphorical, they get a little uncomfortable.
Right,
and
because then you could say everything is.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So as a result, they kind of go the other way, and they go, no, Revelation is literal.
That would have been a wild time.
It's going to happen.
Oh, it hasn't happened yet.
It is all prophetic.
1,000 years of rain?
Some people believe that we're in the time now.
It's been raining a bit. Not that much.
I'm just saying, there's a bunch of different ways to look at this. So some of the ways people look at this, there's a preterist way. This is what they call it within Christian eschatology. This is kind of an atheistic way. This is basically a way to say, like, everything that has happened in Revelation is basically being written about stuff that has already happened in the past. Mm-hmm. So the author, John, is writing about things that have already happened and putting it in like these big flowery metaphorical ways. And it's all just pure literature. It's all, there's no great divine plan that's going to happen. There's a historical view, which is basically saying some of it has happened and some of it is happening now and some of it will happen in the future. And then there is a futurist way that is basically like all of this will be unfolding at a later time. So those are like more or less the three ways that people kind of interpret this. I do kind of want to go through some of the ways that people interpret this through like sort of I would say like a historical sense where they're like, oh, maybe this is all metaphor for things that were happening at the time in order to speak to the people and like communicate the message to them. So one of the things I want to bring up is 666. The mark of the beast. This is a thing people talk about all the time. You see it in rock music, you see it in rap now. You know what I mean? It's like it's a whole thing. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because you need to get your labs done. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you're 35, you feel your testosterone starting to go down a little bit. You got to get your blood work done, see what's going on inside your body. Maybe you're 25, maybe you're 27 like me, and you're like, oh, I don't need to do this. No. Now is the best time to get your blood work done because now you get a baseline for the rest of your life. Now, here's the problem with getting your blood work done. You got to go through and find a lab that accepts your insurance. It's a whole big thing. Then you have to find someone to read and interpret your blood work and then give you some type of dietary change that's going to actually improve your labs based off what they find. This is a huge stress and it's a huge problem. I was bitching about it to a friend of mine and he was like, dude, why don't you check out Merrick Health? It's from my boy Derek from More Plates, More Dates, and it's absolutely amazing. It's saved me so much time and so much energy and money you would not believe. So with Merrick Health, it's super simple. You do one little entry-level questionnaire. It goes through your whole medical history. It goes through your kind of like routine, what type of fitness you like to do, what your diet is, and then they send you a kit. You send your blood work right back, and then within a couple days, they tell you exactly what's going on with your blood work, whether your levels are amazing, whether they're pretty good and they can be better, or whether they're bad and what you can do to improve them. If you're someone like me that's interested in fitness, interested in staying healthy for a long period of time, if you like working out, there's no better solution than Merrick Health. So I want you to check check them out. They offer a turnkey optimization package designed for those driven to maximize performance and support longevity with the most elaborate testing available on the market. So I would recommend you check out Merrick Health. If you're interested, listeners of this program will be getting 10% off at checkout if they use the code GAGNON, GAGNON, at Merrick Health. Again, that's Merrick Health, M-A-R-E-K, health, HEALTH.com/Gagnon, and use the code Gagnon at checkout to save 10%. Take control of your health, go to them, fill out the questionnaire. It's like ordering something off like Uber or like buying something from Amazon. It's just a couple easy clicks and you can get a kit sent to your house, blood work done, and an entire regimen to improve your health. Check them out, merrickhealth.com. Now let's get back to the show. Some people believe, again, 666 will be on the foreheads of the followers of the beast. But I think it's important to look at the greater context here. So again, what John is
like Lil Xan, like Trippy Red. Yeah.
What John is doing here is he's calling back to other books in the Bible. So Revelation is full of all of these callbacks to other parts of the Bible that kind of tie the whole thing together. So in Deuteronomy, it talks about having scripture on our heads. And that basically means that you're living a pious life, you're close to the word of God, and you're basically, one with the religious literature of Christianity. So you don't.
Deuteronomy would have been a great name for the podcast.
Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
That's fire.
Yeah, it is.
But it doesn't literally mean put the scripture on your forehead.
Right.
It just means like, just be one with the scripture. So when he's saying 666, he's not like, there's literally going to be 666 on his forehead. He just means, this is going to be basically, they're going to be living in a way that's antithetical to what Christians believe you should be doing.
It will be clear to see.
Everyone will know, they're living sinfully. They're not honoring God in some capacity, however that is. And then furthermore, there's a really, really interesting thing where basically the letters of the alphabet at this time can be also used as numerals. So this is a very specific thing that was happening both in Greek and in Hebrew at the time of writing this. So again, at the time of writing this, the emperor of Rome was this guy named Nero. Nero was not a good guy. He hated Christians. He was a crazy dude. He was persecuting people. He was killing people all the time. Some people say he was part of the reason why Rome fell apart. If you add up the letters of Nero Caesar's name, when it's spelled in Hebrew, the sum is 666. Apparently, this is a very common thing that they would have done, that John understands that the audience would have read and been like, he's making a reference to Nero here. He's basically saying the evil people at this future time, when the world is falling apart, will be behaving as Nero. And they're not going to literally have 666, but they're going to have like the attitude and spirit of Nero in them at the end of time.
So that's where 666 came from? People speculate?
That's what they're saying.
Because there's no other.
What actually emboldens this theory is that there's some Greek variants of the same writing. And they say the mark of the beast will be 616. And when you take Greek and do the same numerological breakdown, Nero Caesar comes out to 616.
Oh, shit.
So it gives more credence to this idea that like, he's using a metaphor, again, that the people of the time understand in this very specific genre of literature that they're very familiar with, to say at the end of times, people are going to be behaving very evilly. They're going to be wicked. They're going to be sinners, and they're going to be behaving as Nero is right now.
It's a tough reign as a politician to get thrown in the Bible as a metaphor for the devil.
Right?
It's a rough term.
But also, he might have been a scumbag. He might have deserved it.
He sounds like he was not great.
There you go. So I think that to me makes a lot of sense. I'm like, And a lot of the metaphors and stuff in here that I think we read nowadays, we're like, this is crazy. What does this even mean? At the time, there was a lot of things that made a lot more sense to the people that were reading it, understanding the context. So like, even for example, like there's all of these things where like, for example, they talk about Christ appearing with 7 stars around his head. And this is basically immediately setting up some type of like relationship, kind of like counterpart with Jesus and Caesar, the leader of Rome at the time. And so basically they're saying like, you have coins in your pocket that would have, the 7 stars around Caesar's head. And they're looking at this saying, he's basically making a comparison between Christ and Caesar to say that Jesus is the true king. That's what this metaphor is pointing at. But we read it now. We're like, there's like 7 floating gaseous balls, because our understanding of stars is different than what their understanding of stars were. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So again, this is just breaking down, I think, kind of demystifying some of the stuff that in my opinion, when I read Revelation, I'm like, it's largely metaphorical.
Yep.
It's sort of a beautiful tie-up of the whole Bible, where like he's drawing from all of these different parts of the Bible and then summarizing things, and then the world basically ends the exact same way that it started.
Yeah.
Where all humans are living on earth in peace, the way Adam and Eve were. There is a tree of life, there is a river of life, and all people is good, and the curse of sin is ended. It's like kind of beautiful. Where like, the final book wraps up exactly where, Genesis starts. It's like, this is
with a bunch of callbacks with dragons. So you're kind of ending on a flurry, a little grand finale.
That's what I'm saying.
It's like a stand-up set. Dick
Exactly.
joke, callbacks, give them what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
And then a little point there at the end.
Yeah. So I look at it and I'm like, this is actually not as mystical and not as crazy when you kind of break it down. It's actually
But that's if you're assuming that it is metaphorical. Which
right.
people, as you noted, have issue with.
A lot of people dispute that. So again, there's a bunch of different ways to break this down, which is very interesting. And this is like a pretty nuanced, detailed disagreement that happened within specific like Christian biblical circles. So there's this thing known as pre-mill, a-mill, and post-mill. So again, we're talking about this messianic reign, right? Where Jesus comes, 1,000 years of peace, Judgment Day. People dispute when exactly this is supposed to happen, and they reference a bunch of different parts of the Bible and put them together to justify what they claim will happen. And this is where we get the idea of the rapture. You've heard of the rapture?
I have.
So this comes kind of from this idea. And again, the rapture, it depends who you ask. Some people think it's biblically supported and has been around. And
is this Judgment Day, or these are different?
A little different. Basically,
dude, they used to have a. Sorry for the side note.
No, go ahead.
Did you ever smoke spice?
No, I remember
this was back in the day. I had friends who were like college athletes, and they would get drug tested for weed, so they couldn't smoke weed. But we were in college, so they would smoke spice. And there was one called Judgment Day, and everyone who smoked it basically had Judgment Day. It was like anxiety attack in a pouch. And so, like, I had friends who were like, I have a friend who played football at Cal, and he was like smoking it and like freaking the fuck out, and like, I've disobeyed my family.
That's on them. Yeah, it's on the package.
Exactly, it is. So it's
you should.
It might have been a real thing. Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll see those weed strains where it's like the final puff.
Yeah,
like,
it's like, okay, I don't think I want that.
Yeah,
I want. Is there one called mildly high?
Yeah, right.
Light microdose would be an amazing weed strain for me. All right, back to the
perfect. Right. So it's again sort of technical, but this is where the idea of the rapture comes from, which a lot of people have heard the rapture and they're like, what exactly does that even mean? So more or less, kind of what this rapture idea is it got really popular around like the 1800s. Again, in sort of like Protestant evangelical circles. Some people will say that it's been around and it is the true belief of people that read the Bible, of Christians. Other people dispute it and say the rapture is sort of a erroneous idea that doesn't really hold up. Again, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just explaining the details. Basically, if you believe that Jesus is here and then we're in this period of messianic reign where, Christ is king, and then we're going to have kind of like a degradation of society, and then Christ comes back. He brings all the people with him. We do Judgment Day, and then that's the end of the story. Then the rapture idea doesn't really hold up. But if you believe, so for example, there's this thing called the tribulation, where basically there's going to be a period of hardship for Christians. And this creates the rapture, where basically, if you believe that Christians are going to be with God, which again, if you interpret the Bible in different ways, you can get this reading, that Christians are going to be with God prior to the tribulation, then there's basically going to be Christ, the people that go up to be with God before the tribulation, years of tribulation, and then the return of Christ in Judgment Day. That's where you get this idea of the rapture, where basically the people that are devout will then go to be with God prior to the time of difficulty.
I do love how every religion has built in. It's like when you talk to someone about astrology, and it's like there's all these little like built-in things that will help people feel like they are where they're supposed to be. So like every religion has these things where it's like, just so you know, shit's gonna get tough. Like it's built in for all these things where where a group of people are gonna go through this no matter what. Yeah. So it can end up feeling prophetic when it's also just like, hey, just so you know, people aren't going to believe you. and times are going to be tough. And then it's easy to be like, see, it's in there. And it's like, of course that this would happen.
That is in basically every religion.
Yeah.
The ones that I've read, it's like, oh yeah, there will be a time where you are doubted.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then you justify it. I don't know. But maybe one of them's true. Maybe
it's like
one
when you
of them
read
nailed
your
it.
sign and it's like, you know, for people who are born on this birthday, this is going to be a tough week. Like stuff's going to be difficult and you got to work hard. And it's like, I fucking do, dude.
But who's to say? I mean, one of them might be right. And you're like, yeah, they're going to doubt you. You can't dispute. That's the crazy thing. You can't say it's not that.
Yeah.
So again, basically there's going to be this time of tribulation. And so there's these things called pre-tribulationists, mid-trib, and then post-trib. So if you're post-trib, this is like, I think what the classical interpretation is. And that's
post-trib clarity.
yeah. It's basically like, okay, Christ is here. There's going to be this millennia of, you know, Christ's reign or whatever. There is going to be this tribulation, and then Christ is going to return, the second coming of Jesus, and then all the stuff we talked about, Judgment Day, yada, yada. But then there's some people, like I was saying, that are like, no, God is going to come get us before the tribulation or during the tribulation. And in which case, that means we're going to be with God in the middle of all of this before he actually comes back. Mm-hmm. And so there's a passage in Thessalonians where Paul is basically writing, and he says, and this is again, quote from the Bible, "For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel and the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So we will be with the Lord forever." Mm-hmm. And a lot of people point to this and say, yo, we're basically talking about the rapture. That prior to Christ's second coming, before he actually comes back to judge everyone and there's, you know, a final victory over wickedness and evil, that the righteous are going to go be with him. And so they wrote this whole book, like the Left Behind series. It's like a very popular book that I think came out in like the 80s or 90s that basically talks about this idea of the rapture, where it's like, you know, some people went with God and then all the people that are left on earth just have to like deal with this terrible time of tribulation. Mm. And it's kind of wild. Like you see like different memes where it's like someone's clothes are just on the ground and it's like, oh, he just got raptured out of here. Like he's gone. Right. You know what I mean?
And so the concept is, if this were to happen, like if we were sitting here right now, you would just yeet out of here.
So and
just be gone. And I would just be like, whoa, I got to finish this pod.
Yeah, I'm all on my own. Where are the notes?
Give me the laptop.
So there's even references in the Bible where they say, oh, there's, you know, two people in the field. Mm-hmm. And one of them goes to be with Christ and the other one stays to till the field. And it's like,
that sucks.
That's all this work.
Bummer.
Right? It's literally this situation we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it creates a very interesting dynamic. I'm not really a big rapture guy, but there are a lot of people that do believe in it. Mm-hmm. And that's where it comes from. This idea that prior to the actual second coming of the Messiah, that there will be this time where the righteous just fly out.
Yeah.
Crazy. And again, the way you read the Bible, the way you interpret it, you might get a different thing. There's another element of this that I think is actually really important that actually affects geopolitics and foreign policy in America. Mm-hmm. So again, this comes from the literal interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah.
Within the Bible,
we're heading to Israel right now, aren't we?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even throughout, you know, Revelation, there's mentions to Israel. We talk about the New Jerusalem. Yep. Israel is brought up all the time.
It is fascinating because I know more about politics than I know about religion, and it is amazing how like the most fervent supporters of the Jewish state generally are evangelical Christians who want it to exist, not because they think the Jews will be saved, but because they think it has to be there so that they can go be with Jesus while the Jews get damned to hell or whatever.
So there's some mention that once all the Jews congregate in Israel, that then the Messiah will return. So people talk about this. And so
to pick up a penny, folks.
So people basically like read the Bible literally. And some of these people that, again, there's a literal interpretation where, like, for example, in the Bible, there will be mentions where it says, you know, all the people of Israel, if anyone is against you, I will curse them. And everyone that is with you, I will bless them. So me, a Catholic, I interpret this through sort of what I would consider a classical interpretation to say that Israel in this metaphor is representing God's people. This is basically a body of believers that follow God. So when he says Israel, he really is saying, you know, people, my disciples, the people that love Christ and that follow, you know, the Lord. If anyone's against you, I'll curse them. And anyone that's with you, I'll bless them. Mm-hmm. People that read it literally say, oh, he's talking about the literal nation of Israel. And so this is where you get in America a lot of support for Americans, supporting and military backing in Israel because they say, oh, the Bible says that we got to support Israel. And so any government that supports Israel is cool with me. We want to be with them.
So when the Jewish state was established after World War II,
48.
Were they referencing the Bible when they were like, do you think that the people, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but do you think that the people sitting at that table who were like, we got to give a Jewish state, were people who had this belief in the Bible that were like, yo, it's time. We got to make Israel? Because I think most of those are predominantly Christian nations making that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't speak to it specifically, but I can say that, like, growing up, I would meet people. Like, again, I went to a Presbyterian school, which, again, is a sub-denomination of Protestantism. And I would meet parents of my friends that are like, well, yeah, we have to support Israel. Yeah. We have to support Israel because...
Where else are we going to meet up with Jesus?
Literally, it was like baked into the religion. It's like, of course, we must support Israel because God said all that are with Israel are blessed. And everyone that's against Israel is cursed. So we got to support Israel.
We have to support Israel.
And so that's where
wait for the text from Jesus that's like, pulling up in 5, come through.
Yeah. And again, not to speak about like the greater political connotations. This is not a commentary on Middle Eastern politics. You know
Certainly,
what I'm saying?
but it ends up being very interesting because it ends up that people who have these beliefs that, as we're saying, could be right, could be wrong, you end up affecting real people's lives quite seriously.
Exactly.
And with the faith and ferventness with which people believe things, you feel like any decision is justified, especially when something tells you, like, you have to stand with Israel or you ain't with us.
So I think there's some people that look at America and they're like, why do they love Israel so much? And they're, again, not all people. But there's a subset of, Christians that do support Israel, largely because of a literal interpretation of the Bible as well as Revelation. It's pretty wild.
It is pretty wild.
So that's more or less.
What's your stance?
Give it to the Catholics.
Give it to the Catholics.
Let the Catholics have another whirl, all right?
Yeah,
the Crusades
clearly both of you had a shot.
The Crusades weren't great, but I think we can really get it on this track.
I think we should just give it to the fellas, dude. And just have a,
Sigma Chi.
Dude, it should just be a frat. It should just be a boys trip. Get some golf courses out there. Everyone just does their batch out there. Just a bunch of fellas out there.
Could be sick. So people like to point out, like, oh, the Antichrist is coming, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. Again, I think if you take a more metaphorical approach to this...
The Antichrist is a black woman.
It's the opposite of the Uncle Christ.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, Big Antichrist 2 is a movie.
Yeah, that's right. It's a Tyler Perry film.
Yeah, Big Antichrist 2. It's a pretty... Eddie Murphy's everyone. It's crazy. But yeah, so there's like some wild theories. A lot of people try to point to Revelation and other parts of the Bible to be like, look, it's coming, it's happening now. But again, in the Bible, let all the Christians know that no one knows the time that that judgment day will come. Right. Not even Christ himself. Only the Father knows. Damn. So that's what it says. So I don't know if we should really be looking at Revelation and be like,
so Christ is just at the crib gaming, on Xbox, waiting for Dad to be like, it's time.
They say he's at the right hand of the Father, just chilling.
Just posted.
Ready for action.
Are they just hanging?
I don't know, because I think God exists outside of time, so I don't really know how that works for him.
Right.
Like
so like a good hang. We ain't looking at the clock.
That's a good point. We're vibing right now. I don't know how long
I don't know what time it is.
So there we go. That's basically, more or less, the Christian end time story. Mm-hmm. This is what Christians around the world largely believe.
Yeah.
Elements of this, Revelation, stuff like that.
I have a feeling, this is my prediction, the thread of all of these end time is someone's coming back and they're going to know. It's like I have a feeling that every religion's end times is like how children experience Santa. It's like Christmas is going to come and we're going to find out who's been naughty or nice. And you get gifts or you get coal.
That's kind of a good point, because almost all of them do involve the return of or the first coming of a Messiah figure that'll save humanity, and then
it's based on your behavior.
Ultimate judgment.
Yeah.
So if everyone thinks it might be true.
But Santa is like, Jesus for babies.
In a way. Yeah. I think we discuss another Abrahamic religion.
Let's do it.
Again, this is a religion that is based off of Abraham. The same Abraham we talk about in the Bible.
Lincoln.
Not that one. Okay. The other one. The guy Abraham Lincoln is probably named after.
That makes sense.
OG Abraham. Mm-hmm. And this is Islam. So Islam, again, just to kind of give a little breakdown here. And like I said before with Christianity, Islam is an ancient religion which has very many subsets. You have Sunni, you have Shia. I'm sure you've heard these terms. Each of them kind of believes subtly different things so far as, how the religion evolves. And furthermore, how it even affects...
And they haven't let those subtleties define them.
Not at all. But just like Christianity, again, there's little substrata. There's Wahhabism within Islam. And again, that's even a subset of a subset. So all that to say, this is not speaking for all Muslims. This is, again, a broad overview of how people like me that didn't grow up Muslim can understand more or less what Muslims believe and all the similarities and some of the commonalities that we share as believers of an Abrahamic faith. Furthermore, I'm not going to get all this right. I'm not an expert in the Quran. I haven't read the Hadith. I don't know all things, only Allah knows.
Certainly.
But if this is interesting to you, then maybe, you're someone that could research this more, look into it, call up your imam, go to a mosque. Maybe you can learn something.
I'll give your imam a call.
I said imam. Come on.
Yeah.
It's an Arab word. Jeez. Jesus.
Hey,
shout out to him.
Hey, don't say that in this portion.
Well, I'll have
Actually,
you know.
they do believe they just believe that they came later.
And they love Jesus. This is why Muslims
They're tight with Jesus.
Are the best. We have so much in common. So basically within Islam, there's two main doctrines that you got to look at. Okay, the Quran, which again is the word of God, and then the Hadith, which is basically a collection of thoughts and ideas about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So these two things kind of will put together the general idea of end times. So within Islam, the timeline is actually a lot more simple, in my opinion, just based off what I've read, than it is in Christianity. And I'll even show you right here. Basically, you're going to have minor signs. That's going to be the first thing that comes up. And these minor signs, again, from Wikipedia, they have a whole list. Many of them have already happened. So some of these minor signs is the sending of the prophet, praise be upon him, death of the prophet, peace be upon him, disappearance of the fire in the Hijaz, which apparently happened in the 7th century, splitting of the moon, a form of death will kill thousands of Muslims, which is believed to be the Amwas plague, Muslim conquest of Jerusalem, Muslim
I thought it
conquest
was going to be a backpack, folks.
Wait, what is that?
Something that kills hundreds of Muslims.
Jesus. That is anti-Semitic, I think. I don't know.
No, when did the moon split?
I don't know exactly. I don't know. I think if there's a Muslim listening, maybe you can explain what exactly that means. I don't know. So again, these are things that have happened before. Musical instruments become prevalent. 30 liars will appear, each thinking that he is a prophet. Again, this is all sort of described. Events that are then argued to have been happening now. So tribulations will continue to prevail. Zina, which is adultery, will become widespread. Wine and alcohol.
Was it not before? Is the argument?
That's the argument. I mean,
The argument.
It seems like it.
People were keeping it in the old pantalones back then.
Seems like. I mean, if I was going to take a time machine at any time in history to get laid, I'd probably go to the 90s.
I was going to say to tomorrow.
Yeah, right? It seems like it's getting progressively easier.
Yeah, 90s, Wall Street.
Right?
Martini, lunch.
So I wouldn't go to, 1400 BC or whenever this is.
Right.
And then there's
But
again.
I think people were smashing back then too.
Sure, but I think the zina, the adultery, sex outside of marriage, I think is much more common now. Is the argument. Again,
Right.
This is what they would say. Arabia will become a land of gardens and rivers. That's an interesting one.
That hasn't happened yet.
So they say. But then you look at Dubai, you look at Abu Dhabi, you look at the Emirates, you look at Saudi Arabia, you look at Qatar.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of foliage, there's a lot of greenery.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. There's even a prophecy in the Hadith about, that Muhammad says, peace and blessings be upon him. He says, when the prophet was asked about the signs of the final hour, one of the signs he mentioned, again, this is in the Hadith, when you see the barefoot, naked, destitute shepherds competing in constructing tall buildings, then you will know that the final hour is upon us.
Dubai.
Look at Dubai. I'm just saying. A lot of people point this out. So
Dubai is the Muslim belief in the end times.
I don't know. I'm just pointing it out.
Smoking hookah and skydiving.
He said this thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
It's a pretty solid prophecy.
Barefoot, naked shepherds.
Yeah, I think he's talking about Bedouin pastoralists, people that have like livestock.
Who've never
and-
had Mexican food.
Wait, what?
Pastoralists.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to put a pun limit on you.
Okay. I don't know.
Because I think you hear words
Peace
and you
be
go,
upon him. Yeah.
you go, that's a different,
Okay.
that sounds like a different word.
That is different. Yes, yes.
So more or less, again, there's going to be like
the worst segment for me to be ripping off jokes during at all.
Let the record show.
Yeah, that you.
I don't joke around with Muslims. Okay.
Yeah, I think that
When
is
we get to the
smart
Buddhist part,
move.
when you get to the Buddhist part, you can make as many jokes about them
Okay,
as
cool.
you want.
We're gonna
all
get
right?
loose on those fucking. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying, okay.
Yeah.
I don't mess around. All right. When
I
it comes
think
to
that is smart.
when it comes to my Muslim brothers.
Yes.
So more or less, basically, you'll see the minor signs where it's like many of them have already happened.
Yep.
They will continue to happen. There will be moral decay and degeneracy, and talk about like a lot of like tall buildings and sort of urbanization of the world.
Yeah.
Again, it's all described in the Quran and the Hadith. This is where things get a little wild. The first sign, again, is what they talk about the Sufyani. So this will come as one of the earlier signs prior to the big events that are happening. This will basically be someone that will rule over Syria. They will murder those from the household of the prophet, peace be upon him. And they will kill children and rip out the bellies of women. And then we will get the
Tearing them guts up.
basically. But then we're going to get the Mahdi, the Imam Mahdi. This is a great leader. The Mahdi is an excellent leader. This is someone that basically will bring peace amongst all the people in the world. This is a common opinion, specifically above the Sunnis, that the Mahdi is an expected ruler that will be sent by God before the end times to reestablish righteousness. He is to be held from among the descendants of Muhammad, peace be upon him, through the daughter Fatima and her husband Ali, and his physical characteristics include a broad forehead and a curved nose. Sounds like me a little bit.
Could be you.
He will eradicate injustice and evil from the world. And yeah, he's basically going to be a great man.
Do people believe that the poor Syrian regime that you spoke about has occurred, given everything that's happened in that country?
I don't know.
And is that Syria the Syria that we know today? It's hard to say because these are like concepts that get thrown around and
Yeah,
changed,
and nations
you know?
sort of change over time. So
Yeah.
I can't say specifically, but
Yeah.
I imagine someone's
But I'm
probably
sure
worked on
some
that.
people believe that like the Assad regime and the civil war and all that has happened, and then a ruler. I wonder if that had anything to do with the civil war. We don't know.
I don't know.
You and I don't, but someone does.
But I'm sure someone's talked about it.
Yeah.
But all that to say, the Mahdi is a great guy. He basically comes and restores righteousness amongst the people of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But
So this
then
dude's gonna come through.
he's going to come through. But this is not all good news. Right around this time, we're going to start getting major signs that Judgment Day is upon us. And probably the greatest of the signs is what's known as the Dajjal. The Dajjal is the Antichrist. The Dajjal, again, for Muslims and non-Muslims alike, this is the greatest fitna that we will experience in our lifetime. The Dajjal will be the greatest trial, and he will lead all people astray. And this, again, kind of ties into all the different prophecies. He's described as being well-built. He's massive. He has a bulging eye and only able to see from his left eye. On his forehead, or between his eyes, are the letters KFR, the root for kafir, meaning an unbeliever, which every Muslim will be able to read. He will come from a place in the east.
In the East.
Some people speculate that he might be Russian.
Yeah.
Throughout history,
Almost
people
have to be.
People have talked about them potentially being like Genghis Khan, from
Yeah.
Mongols.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of speculation as to who the Dajjal is.
Yao Ming.
Could be him.
Yeah.
We gotta check his record. I think
Yeah.
you can see out of both his eyes, though, so I don't
Yeah.
think it counts.
Not as much as you'd like.
He's the false Messiah. He is the Muslim Antichrist, and he will be one of the first greater signs of the apocalypse. And basically, as the world will start going bad after the Mahdi is here. The world will start falling apart. There will be droughts. There'll be problems. And then the Dajjal will save everyone. Everyone will join his ranks. It's said that he will appease the starving masses, Bedouins, weavers, children of fornication, and specifically Jews, because they don't have a Messiah. That
yeah.
they've been waiting for Messiah. So they believe that the Dajjal will come and he will basically get all the Jews on his side because he will say, I am the Messiah. I am Isa.
And they'll be like, oh my God. We've been waiting for you.
What took you so long?
Yeah.
We've been waiting all this time.
Yeah.
You schlepped over from heaven.
Yeah.
Didn't even leave a note.
This guy is a...
So that's what they believe. They believe that it'll be the Jews initially, but then the Christians will follow because the Christians are waiting for the return of the Messiah. And the Christians will go, oh my goodness, this is the Messiah.
Yeah.
And so now many people on earth will be following the Dajjal.
And then finally the bros will be like, fuck it, let's ride.
The bros will probably join in.
Yeah.
Again, any Muslim that is listening, or even non-Muslims, if you are interested in rejecting the fitna, again, this will be a difficult time for Muslims. The Dajjal will tempt them. He'll be very seductive. He'll be able to offer them many things. The people that follow him won't be starving, but many of the people that don't follow him, the true Muslims that don't subscribe to the Dajjal's deceit, they might have a difficult time. This will be very challenging. But the best protection is learn the first 10 verses of the Surah Al-Kahf. This is...
You have them?
I don't have them specifically, but basically it is scripture from the Quran that will ward off the Dajjal, and it'll keep you pure and on your way.
Okay.
Following Allah and not being tricked by the Dajjal. Again, the Dajjal.
In reading about this, were you like, maybe I should know these verses?
1,000,000%, and I looked into it. A lot of it was in Arabic, so I have to learn that.
It's a little tough.
But I did find an English translation, and I'm working on it. So
Okay.
I'm gonna dial it in because I think it is good
Just
to know.
in case.
Just in your back
Yeah.
pocket. You see a guy with KFR on your forehead, you're like, all right, maybe.
But
I
again,
should.
you were assuming this is probably a metaphor, right? Like they're like you think that
I don't know.
because if a dude has shit written on his forehead, it'll be like, okay, this is relatively obvious to see here.
So this is the thing. I have read the Bible growing up, and I'm much more versed in understanding metaphor and non-metaphor of the Bible. I don't know if Muslims necessarily would see this as metaphorical in the same way.
They don't strike me as being down to play super loose with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Muslims, if you're listening, comment. I mean, tell me, do you think it'll be literal or do you think it'll be kind of a metaphor? I don't know. My assumption is that I think it's pretty literal. They're like, no. He's going to be blind in one eye.
Yep.
He's going to have a bulging eye. Like he's going to come from this specific land. He'll come from, like, I think it's very clear. The Quran says it. Allah inspired it. This is what it is.
Yeah.
That's the way I understand it. So the Dajjal will go around and he's going to get the whole world on his side. He's going to travel the whole world, entering every city. Again, entering every city is specific. This is not entering. He's conquering every city except Mecca and Medina, holy spaces. The Jews and the Christians will follow him
So he's going to go to like Ontario, California?
all over the world.
All of it. He's
whole
going to go
thing.
to every city.
That's what it says.
He's pulling up to Albuquerque.
This is the prophecy.
Okay.
His army will kill and conquer until they corner and they eventually get in front of the Mahdi. Remember, the great Imam. And a group of 5,000 Muslim fighters in Jerusalem. This is a very, very important point, okay? Because this, basically around this time, is when we get the return of Christ, Isa ibn Maryam. Isa being Jesus Christ. Which again, Muslims don't believe that Christ was crucified. They believe that someone else was killed and that Christ actually just went straight to heaven, that he was never killed. Which again is a distinction from Christianity.
Yeah.
But they see Christ as a great prophet. So Muslims, again, they honor Christ and they see him as a great prophet that spreads the word of Allah.
It's so interesting to me that the Jewish people don't have one, considering they tend to love a good prophet.
Maybe there's no prophet good enough. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
They're wanting the greatest prophet of all.
Yeah.
So this is when we get the return of Christ. As this whole battle is basically heating up, you have the Dajjal leading his people, and then you have the Mahdi leading the devout Muslims and the good people, and they basically have a great showdown. The second coming of Christ, he will come and he will destroy every cross, basically saying like, "Yo, Christianity is whack. Don't."
That would be a wild turn of events.
Imagine you come down, you're like, Jesus, you're here. And he's like,
like,
yo,
"That
what are you
shit's
wearing?
whack,
What are
dude."
you wearing, bro? Take that off your neck.
Yeah. No more dangle earrings for the fellas.
Yeah. So that's what's foretold in the Quran. They'll kill the pigs, again, saying like, hey, don't eat pigs. We have to follow,
You're going to kill them?
Yeah, we have to follow laws of halal.
You don't have to kill them.
That's what it says.
Okay.
And he'll abolish the jizya tax, which I don't know exactly what this means. But
the jizz tax?
he'll basically reinforce that, hey, Islam is the one true faith.
Yes.
And then Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, will destroy the Dajjal just by looking upon them. He will kill the Dajjal, all of the warriors, and all of those people will be cast away. And then ultimately, the Mahdi and Jesus Christ will rule the earth. And
Jesus still got a big role for them.
huge role.
Yeah.
Understated, I feel like. I think if
Yeah.
more Christians knew what,
You're like, oh, yeah.
Like
this
all
is
these
just, this is just episode 3 of the trilogy. I mean, that's why there's so much in Islam that's like, you can tell it came last because their whole thing is like, just so you know, we're the one real one. Well, I know we're all talking about the same thing, but no, this is the one. Like, this is it.
I think of more like racist Christian Americans that are like, oh, these terrorists.
Yeah.
If they were just like, yo, you like Jesus also?
Yeah.
Clear up a lot of confusion. They'd be
Didn't
like,
realize we were fans of the same thing.
wait, you all, you know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
finding out you like the same band. You're like,
Exactly. It's like, oh, wait. Oh, it's like when fans of the Police meet Sting fans.
there you go.
It's like, oh, I like his newer
Other
stuff.
Yeah, that's all it is.
yeah.
So
I'm
I think
still a fan.
I think there's a lot of disagreements that could be settled.
Yeah.
Some people disagree, again, within Islam. It is a broad thing. It is not a monolith. Some people dispute whether or not the Dajjal is human, whether it is a manifestation of the devil, or whether it is partially human and then imbued with the spirit of the devil, shaitan. It's not really clear. And again, there's some dispute. But all that to say, basically Christ comes down, starts wrecking house, and then saves the world.
Classic.
But it's not all over yet, because there's a very important thing in Islam known as the Yajooj and the Majooj. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because it's 2024, and it's time to talk about something important. When you are seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Yes, that's right. The world is a crazy place, and one person's negligence can result in another's settlement. And that's why I got to talk to you about Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and over 1,000 lawyers. Yes, these are the big boys. You know them, you see their billboards all over the world. If you ever drove down I-90 from Florida to New York, I'm telling you, you've seen the billboards, all right? Have you ever watched a UFC fight? You've seen them right on the banner. I'm telling you, these are the biggest guys in the game, all right? With over $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. The annoying thing with most attorneys is that in order to submit a claim, you got to call them up, you got to talk to their people, you got to go back and forth on the emails, you got to hope that they see it. They might charge you just to even look at their claim. Here's the cool thing with Morgan & Morgan. With 8 clicks or less, you can submit a claim, and one of their licensed attorneys will take a look at it and get back to you. It's that easy. It's like ordering something off Amazon. It's just a couple clicks. You can submit your claim very easily and cheap. Yeah, how about $0? That's how much it costs to submit a claim with Morgan & Morgan. Extremely easy, no fee required. So, if you are ever injured, you can go check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. That's right, unless they win for you. Unless they fight and get you compensation, you're not paying a single dollar. That's a pretty good deal. So, for more information, go to forthepeople.com/Gagnon. That's correct, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, that's pound 529 from your cell phone. That's for the people, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. This is a paid advertisement. Now let's get back to the show after this short disclaimer. The Yajooj and the Majooj is a very famous, and there's actually some reference to this in Christianity as well, which is actually quite interesting. It's mentioned both in the Bible in a version and also in the Quran. Basically, the Yajooj and the Majooj is known as the most fearsome, brutal, tribal killers that are going to lead a conquest on Earth. And I'm not exactly positive the timeline of how it all works, but I understand it to be after the Dajjal, or concurrently with the Dajjal, the Yajooj and the Majooj will basically be released upon Earth. And it'll be up to Christ, Isa ibn Maryam, to destroy both the Dajjal and the Yajooj and the Majooj. Basically, as it goes, there was a great Muslim king, Dul Qarnan. Some people believe this to be Alexander the Great. Dul Qarnan meaning 2 horns. Mm-hmm. So basically, this is a king that had 2 horns on his head. Some people believe this is Alexander the Great because the parts of land that Alexander was kind of controlling kind of symbolized two horns. So if you look at geographically, it's like, oh yeah, this is the man of two horns, basically the man of two territories. Or maybe it was a literal garment that he wore that had two horns. We can't say. But Dul Qarnan was a good man. He was a great Muslim leader. And basically he was going around the world. This is a long time ago. And he meets a group of people that say, hey, we need help because there is this brutal, tribal group that's killing everyone. They're murdering all of us. They're killing our women. And we need to do something about this. They do, quote, great mischief on earth. They're cannibals to varying degrees of height and breadth. And there's something that we need to do. So Dul Qarnan, being a fair and good king, decides to build a barrier. But he tells the local people, he says, this barrier will only be up as long as Allah permits. So he builds the barrier out of copper and iron and puts Yajooj and the Majooj behind this barrier. Now they're cast away. Their location is indescript, but it's believed to be on Earth somewhere. That basically they are behind a wall where they're waiting to be released. And this, again, is the most fearsome, worst tribe, worst group, worst killers you could imagine. It's said that basically at the end of times, God, Allah, will dissolve this wall. He'll basically take down the wall, and the Yajooj and the Majooj will be released, and they will be plentiful. There'll be millions of them. It'll be like insects, is how it's described. They will descend down from the mountains and from all places. They'll drink from the river and from the lake of Tiberian. They'll drink the water. They'll drink it completely dry. They're going to be so plentiful, and they're going to go around the world, and they're basically going to be on conquest, destroying, killing, and pillaging many people. They're extremely terrifying, and yeah, it's going to be like an apocalyptic war scenario where these two tribal groups, Yajooj and the Majooj, are killing and destroying everybody. Pretty crazy.
So these two tribes are going to come fuck everybody up, basically.
Exactly. Until, basically, Isa and the Mahdi are going to stop them. They're going to kill them all, and then they will preserve peace on earth by getting rid of both the Dajjal and the Yajooj and Majooj. There's, again, dispute amongst Muslims, whether you're Shia or Sunni, to say whether or not the Yajooj and the Majooj are human or not. Some people believe that, of course, they're human. They're just like us. They're made of, flesh and bones. Some people believe that they're not. There's apparently a hadith that says that God has created 1,200 species of the land, 1,200 species of the sea, 70 species of the children of Adam, and the people are the children of Adam, except the Yajooj and the Majooj. Again, children of Adam being humans, but the Yajooj and the Majooj not humans. Again, this is disputed. Some people believe that they're, completely of human origin. Regardless, they're destroyed by Isa, aka Jesus, and the Mahdi, and they restore relative peace on earth. Now, these are the major events of Muslim Judgment Day. Again, you have minor signs. You have a time of trouble. The Mahdi comes. You have the Dajjal, the one-eyed AntiChrist. Christ returns, destroys the Dajjal with the help of the Mahdi, and then they take out the Yajooj and the Majooj, and then we still have continuous major signs. Some time goes on, and then we have Judgment Day. Now,
the spice.
Yes, the famous Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Again, there's going to be peace on earth for this time before the Judgment Day. There'll be interesting, again, major signs. The sun will rise in the west. And then ultimately, again, according to what I've read, I'm not an expert, a peaceful death of all believers from inhalation of a lethal breeze will come across them. A trumpet will blast from the angel Gabriel, signaling the destruction of earth. A second blast will then kill the death of anything that is still living. And then we will enter into the divine judgment. The resurrected will stand in a grand assembly. Each person's book of deeds, where every small and great thing is recorded, will be read.
Sounds like a mess.
Yeah, it's like
Can you imagine the line?
Yeah, my goodness. I hope it goes quick. I think it will.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Now, again, this is Judgment Day, where all the people are then, resurrected and they go through all of this. If you die now, I believe as a Muslim, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, I very well could be. If you die now, you don't go directly to heaven or hell. You basically, depending on what your impending situation will be, is like you're almost in like this liminal kind of limbo phase.
I love how even in the spiritual realm, we just put in layers of bureaucracy that sound horrible to go through.
Well, it's not necessarily
Who's
horrible.
running this?
It's not necessarily horrible.
Okay.
So there's some people that are awaiting paradise with Allah. And those people will basically be looking at how great paradise is. They can't enter it just yet because they haven't been judged, but they can see how great it is. But the people that are awaiting hell will see the horrors and the atrocities of hell. And that's what they
Either
will
way,
see.
you're in a waiting room.
Basically, that's how I understand it to be.
Yeah.
I don't know how long you wait for, though.
Yeah.
It might be quick. It might be a 10-minute little
Yeah.
short film. I don't know.
Yeah.
Regardless, you die. This is what you see. And then you're in Judgment Day.
Yep.
With all people.
Yep.
So again, you basically get your book of deeds read. Allah judges all people. He's there alongside the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And you then will walk a bridge of Asst.
I can't help but I'm seeing all of this very clearly, and everyone's getting judged, and I'm just envisioning like very like entitled American, Christian people waiting in line to get judged, and some Middle Eastern guys like, yeah, no, you're not with it, and they're like, oh, come on.
I think it's
Let me speak to the manager.
I think it's like
I'm not gonna fucking put up with this bullshit. Let me talk to who's really in charge.
I think it's like global entry. I think like in this case, I think Muslims will have global entry, and then we'll all have to be in like the foreigner line.
But I pay for Clear.
I don't know if they
I have
accept
TSA
Clear.
Pre.
I don't know.
I have the Amex Lounge.
Most of the people that run Clear,
that-
I think they're Hindu, so I
Yeah.
think they would also be in line with us. So I don't know exactly how it goes. That's just my experience with Clear.
Maybe that's why they don't believe in death. Because they're like, what are we gonna do all that?
Yeah, exactly. Who's gonna
We're
run
gonna
it?
run the fucking. Who's gonna run it, dude? No, we just gotta keep doing this again.
Yeah. So that's Judgment Day. Basically, we have to cross a bridge. All the people that are then worthy of entering the heavenly abode will be able to cross, whereas the damned will go into the fire, falling off the bridge into the pit of Jahannam. And that's not a good place. You don't want to be in hell.
I may have a limited perspective of how this works, but like if heaven is all just super religious people, I'm like, it doesn't sound that fun.
It's not about funness in the way we see it on earth, though, I will say. Again, this is just speaking
But
for...
I'm about fun.
But what is more fun than being in perfect communion with Allah or God or Hashem?
Having a good time.
It doesn't even compare.
Okay. All right.
I'm telling you right now, it doesn't even compare. Any fun that you have on earth is just by the mere
But if it's
virtue
not fun,
that
then
God
what is
created
it?
you.
Right.
Perfect communion. And
So
hell,
it's like a state of just.
perfection.
But yeah, I guess so.
And hell, again, is not, there's fire everywhere. There is fire. But again, it's not the fires, it's the
I just
isolation.
feel like even in moments where I have felt, touched by a piece of divinity, there's more levity to it than the way it's described in all these books. Like if I've ever felt like in a moment of like a spiritual moment, like it's a little more light and vibes than the way everyone describes it.
Yeah, I mean, it might be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been to Judgment Day, but I imagine that there might be some funny stuff about it.
Could be.
You know what I mean?
Imagine just sitting in the line, like, he's going to hell. Look at those Birkenstocks. You know what I mean?
Just gotta hope for that outfit.
Yeah, that's straight to hell.
Or there's like
It ends up, that would be amazing because then it would just only be gay people in heaven. The people with the right outfits.
like Steve.
Oh,
went?
honey, you got this wrong.
Wait, what?
Put it together.
Now, let me say, according to what I've read about Islam, not everyone consigned to hell will remain there. It's believed by both scholars and lay Muslims.
Get on good behavior.
All but the mushrikun, those who have committed the worst sin of all, which is the impunity of Tawhid. Again, my Arabic is not perfect, but the impunity of Tawhid is the most unforgivable thing in Islam, as I understand. And this is basically disputing the oneness of Allah. So if you are someone that believes in the monotheism and the oneness of Allah, then you have a chance of being saved from the fires of hell and ultimately entering communion with Allah. So that would
I'm open to that.
That would be me.
I'm open to that.
I am a monotheist. I believe in the God of Abraham as a Christian. That may be Allah. It may be Hashem. It may be, Jesus Christ himself. So
Yeah.
we'll wait to see. But according to this, again, from what I've read, and I might be wrong here,
Yeah. I'm a free agent, so I'm just kind of shopping around.
2 for 2 right now. Let the record show.
Oh, you're in on both.
I could be. I'm just saying. I
Yeah.
could be. Again, like within Catholic tradition, we kind of have a similar thing where we have purgatory.
Yeah.
Where you go to purgatory for a little bit, and then you pipe up to heaven.
Yeah. See, I remain unconvinced by either of these potentialities.
Well,
however,
we got some more offers on the
I
table.
am open to it. I'm not saying that I'm the all-knowing.
We got some more offers for you.
That
So
would be.
this is again what Muslims believe. So I've understood and what I've read.
And hey, not that anyone's wrong here. We're all good.
Seem a little concerned.
Hey, we're all
Seem
good.
a little scared.
I'm open to anything.
No.
Convince me. lightly, please.
When's your next show in Minnesota? When is that? When is that coming up?
Actually, we're gonna do one out there in January, I think. Sisyphus Brewing, joeavery.com for tickets. joeavery.com/live.
I know a couple Muslims that live out there. Maybe they can convince you.
joeavery.com/live for now.
We'll see if you said anything terrible.
I'm open to it.
So this is what I understand to be the tradition of the Muslims. If you're Muslim listening, if I ruined anything or if I completely botched something, please correct me in the comments. Let me know.
And I just want to apologize generally to everyone.
Let's go on to another Abrahamic faith. I think the last and third. There might be more, but I believe it's only be three.
Okay.
You know who it is. The one,
God.
the only. It's the ones.
Oh my God.
It's the ones we all know and love.
CAA.
Yes, it is the landlords,
kidding.
the brokers,
Yeah.
the bankers. It is the Jews.
Yes.
What's up, Jews?
It's cracking.
And some of y'all just probably clicked this part of the video to be like, let's see how bad they fucked this up.
Let's see.
The timestamps led them
You
directly
can have
to
a
us.
little more. You can have some fun with them, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, depending on which way you slice it. You know what I
Depending
mean?
on which way. Yes,
You know what I
right.
mean?
Right on the tip of the dick.
Hey,
be honest.
we're bristling right now.
Yeah.
So the Jewish, as far as I understand,
You're already
it,
speaking.
I do that. That is a very funny thing. Because you have to understand, the way I learned all this is like I listened to like pastors and priests. I listened to imams.
Yeah.
And depending on who taught it to me is
How
how I
many
speak.
hours of research we talking went into this?
Maybe like 5 or 6. I loved it.
This
I
is-
really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But like the Muslims, they speak like
You should be a teacher. I mean, you are. You're just teaching idiots like me.
Duh.
And whoever's. Yeah.
welcome to it. But I would listen to like rabbis and like they would speak in a specific way, or like I would listen to like these gurus, these like
Yeah.
Hindu gurus, and the way they talk is just so funny. So we'll
excited
get into
for
all
that
of it.
portion,
But
too.
you'll notice even my mannerisms when I
In
speak
case the
about
light goes out.
when I speak about Allah, when I speak about the Yajooj and Majooj.
You did. You hit a lot of peace be upon him, I think, respectfully and well placed.
I did a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Jews. So Jewish end times. There's not a ton. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
It's not-
Aside from the wrong order.
That is the ultimate end time. It's cold. My soup is cold. This is my Armageddon.
Yeah.
No, basically, again, Jews follow a couple different books. So you have the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These are the 5. They also have the Hebrew Bibles. These are books like Ezekiel, Jeremiah. Many Jews and rabbis will then research these and they'll take inspiration. Again, not believing that it's divinely inspired, but helpful things written by very smart Jews. And then you have things like the Talmud, which from my understanding, again, I could be wrong here. And again, there's very many subsets of Judaism that all kind of believe in different things because again, Judaism doesn't have one singular, organized leadership of the religion. So there's very many subsets that kind of believe varying things, but there's general broad strokes that we're going to talk about now. So much of what we understand about Jewish end times comes from Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And basically, here's more or less the order of things. God redeems the Jewish people from their captivity that began with the Babylonian exile. God returns the Jewish people to the land of Israel. God restores the kingly house of David and the third temple, the temple in Jerusalem. God appoints a regent from the house of David, which again, this is the Messiah, that will lead the Jewish people of the world and usher in the Messianic age. This is characterized by justice, righteousness, and peace. All nations will then recognize that the God of Israel is the one true God. God will resurrect the dead, and then he will create a new heaven and a new earth. It's sort of similar to the other stories that we've talked about.
Yep.
So again, Jews don't have a Messiah. They're waiting for their Messiah to come. So this is basically the biggest thing is the rebuilding of the third temple. So first 2 temples have gone down. You've heard of this before.
No.
So
Can I just, is it just simplifying the Abrahamic religions? Jews come along and they're like, just so you know, this is the one true God. Christians come along and go, all that, but just so you know, this is the one true Messiah. Islam comes around and goes, all that, great, just so you know, this is the one true religion. Plus Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Sort of. I think that there's, again, some dispute, whereas like Muslims would look at Christ and say, you shouldn't worship Christ.
There's some dispute.
You shouldn't worship Christ. This is, again, just a great prophet.
He's just a homie who's going to be there at the end days shutting shit down.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's like...
I worship that.
Right.
I can't be a fan. I'm a Warriors fan. I can't love Klay Thompson just because Steph Curry's got the hot hand. What are we doing?
So
Shout out to Klay. He's on the Mavericks now, but he had a good career.
I think it depends, because I think if you were to ask... I think if you were to ask Christians, they'd probably be like, oh, well, you know, the Jews, they got it pretty much right, but then they didn't see or, you know, honor the divinity of Christ.
Right.
And then Muslims would probably say like, oh, yeah, the other two, they got it mostly right, but they didn't see the brilliance of ultimately Allah, but also his great prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So I think they look at these things and they go, you kind of got some of it, but you could have been true followers of the one true faith, but you kinda,
just stopped part way.
You got a mulligan. You know what I mean? You sort of goofed it.
Yeah.
So I think that's how they would probably see it. Again, from an outside secular view, you're like, oh, these are just the Godfather. This is just Yeah, this is just a great trilogy.
Yeah.
But again, it's...
And then you look at the new religions, and it's kind of like these new like animated like Star Wars movies and shit. It's like, come on, dude, what are we doing? Stop.
We're going to get into those.
Stop it.
So what's interesting about some of these things, specifically within Judaism, there's one thing that I want to talk about. Again, this is completely from a left field. This is just a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And this is known as the red heifer. The red heifer situation.
I've heard of this, actually.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
So again, what Jews need to happen is they're going to rebuild the third temple. I don't know exactly if all Jews need to return to Israel or if only some, or if it's just upon the recreation of the third temple. I know that the third temple is the ultimate element of Judaism. Again, they had two temples before. They were both destroyed. And now you have the Wailing Wall, where you see, obviously, Jews go now to Jerusalem. It's sort of under, contested management.
Sort of.
There's a mosque that's built there, Al-Aqsa. And there's a wall there, and that's basically the closest they can get to their sacred site, and that's where they pray. They put their prayers into the wall. That's part of the religion.
Right.
The red heifer situation is very interesting. So Jews want to build the third temple. Now, in order to build the third temple, now again, they want to build it because they want to usher in this new messianic age and create a time where the Messiah can return, or the Messiah can come for the first time.
Yeah. Takes a minute.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Especially if you've been boozing.
Haram. This is haram. You need to create specialized tools to create the temple. And you also need to purify the workers that are working on the temple. In order to do this, you have to take the ashes of a red heifer. Now, this is very interesting. They are going to sacrifice a red heifer, or so it seems, and they're going to combine the ashes with all the prior red heifers that have been used to purify and build temples over the past 2,000 or so years.
And they have these ashes.
They have the ashes because they discovered them in a Bedouin cave where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls.
That must have been a day.
An unbelievable day for archaeology. I mean, they found thousands and thousands of scrolls that basically had perfect translations of the Bible, of the Torah, of, the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
As well as a bunch of other artifacts, such as these ashes.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who've gotten fired up after finding some rolled up paper and powder.
It'll change your night.
Yeah, it will.
It'll change your night.
I don't mean to skip ahead here, but someone was telling me about this. Don't they believe they have found, like, at current, a farmer or some shit who has a red heifer?
Again, this is the relationship with evangelical America and the ushering in of the Messiah.
Yeah.
So let's take a look.
A lot of farmers out there.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Yeah.
So again, they need to build on the Temple Mount. Right now on the Temple Mount is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is a sacred site for Muslims because this is the site that Muhammad ascended into heaven, peace be upon him. Now, again, there's some people, specifically Jews, that would say, oh, he didn't specifically go on this site. He actually had a dream where he went on this site. Again, it's contested amongst the religions. I have no dog in it. One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Shout out to the Pope. So again, this is where it gets a little crazy. Fast forward to today. That's the prophecy. There is an evangelical Christian group of farmers in Texas that have recently contracted and delivered 5 red heifers. Now, these are not just regular heifers, okay? These are
pics of these motherfuckers?
Oh, yeah. I'll show you.
I'd like to see.
They must be perfect in their redness. They have to be perfect red cows. perfect in their redness. They can't have even 2 hairs of any other color. That will disqualify it. Even the hooves have to be red. It has to be 3 or 4 years old. Older animals could be used, but it can't be any younger. It must be of an adult age. It can't have any type of internal or external defect or blemish. And furthermore, it can't have been used for any type of physical labor. It can't even have a blanket placed on it. It can't even have a person lean on it. Pretty crazy.
Damn.
Apparently, these heifers have actually been delivered to Israel. Apparently, they're there. Again, my research here is a couple weeks old, but apparently they're in Israel. And again, according to something that I've read, and I could be wrong here, there was an actual Hamas spokesperson, which I don't know what it... Schultz brought this up. He was like, what does it take to be a spokesperson for Hamas? I don't know. A Hamas spokesperson said that on the 100th day of the war, he explained to people that they opened the war because the Jewish people are preparing to bring upon the end times. They're looking to take over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, take over the Temple Mount, and rebuild their third temple. Again, this is what he believes. Jews would contest this, and they would say this is just a bullshit conspiracy. We can also rebuild our third temple potentially in other places. We can also rebuild our third temple on the same mount without having to destroy the mosque. We can live in harmony.
Right.
Again, it depends who you talk to. There's a lot of, shenanigans going on with all these.
There's a lot of shenanigans going on.
A lot of stuff going on. You know what I mean? They're getting all wild over there. Needless to say. So that's a very interesting part of this. Where again, these evangelical farmers were like, "Oh, we would love to help rebuild this third temple because then the Messiah will come and it's going to be Jesus, and we're going to tell all y'all to suck it."
Yeah.
So they have a dog in the fight where they're like, "Let's bring on the Messiah," and the Jews are like, "Let's bring on the Messiah." And then the Muslims...
On the off chance that this isn't correct,
okay,
it is the funniest thing of all time that everyone has dedicated their lives to this. That there are farmers who are like, we got to get these red cattle so that we can bring on the end of times.
Yeah.
And an entire state of people is like, we need these, bring us these cattle. And then a whole nother group is like, we got to do this because they got the cattle and they're trying to pop off. And everyone's freaking out. And it's, what if it's not true? This
is where it's
hilarious
crazy.
way to
so
behave.
Again, they could all be tied together.
Where it could all be true.
The Muslims believe the Messiah is going to come.
Right.
But he's going to be a false Messiah. He'll be the Dajjal. The Jews will follow him. The Christians will follow him. And then we have to wait for the actual one.
The funniest thing is like in picturing any of this in the social media era, where like we would all just like get used to it and be like, oh my God, did you see the Messiah came down the other day? And it'd be like, dude, the memes are unbelievable. It's like when Trump got shot, it took like 4 days for people to just move on. I'm like, we're moving on?
I'll be doing an episode of it.
Yeah.
I'll try to get him on the pod.
Yeah.
But like,
if the Messiah does one TikTok, it's over.
But
it's
also,
not real.
If the Messiah is missing an eye and has KFR on his forehead, I'm going to be like, I'm actually Muslim now.
Yeah.
Because this is a pretty weird little coinkydink.
That would be a pretty strong coinkydink.
They kind of nailed it.
And that type of shit would play on TikTok.
Oh, 100%.
Like, you know
Face
what I mean? People are like, that's a hook right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll stop my scroll.
Yeah.
Jews have a very interesting idea of Judgment Day, which again, we talked about all these other Judgment Days. We've seen Christianity, we've seen Islam.
It's just when you go to dinner with your Jewish mother.
I don't like her. I don't think she's good for you. Judaism, the Day of Judgment Day, again, it's disputed. There's nothing that's very clear within Judaism as far as this goes. But again, Rosh Hashanah, which we all know and love, is more or less a day of judgment that happens every year for the Jews. They actually blow the shofar, which is a horn. It's comes from the horn of a ram. And this is intended to, quote, wake the listeners from their slumbers and alert them to the coming judgment. So this is a thing that happens every single year. So they're like, we don't really need a Judgment Day because we have Judgment Day every single year. It happens all the time within the Jewish tradition. Again, different rabbis will contest this, and different subsets of Judaism will have their own traditions. Some say that there will be a resurrection of the dead. Others say that there's no need. And it's not super clear. Other rabbis hold that the Last Judgment will only apply to Gentile nations, not for the Jewish people. The Jewish people are already chosen, so they don't need any type of judgment. What's interesting here is that the Jewish idea of hell is very fascinating. So it hasn't always been clear to me. And again, I've been researching this. I can't find an exact answer. I don't know if Jews always believed in hell, and then they kind of adopted later a different version of hell. It's difficult to say. I think people probably
It's like how Hanukkah's more popping now just because Christmas is going on.
something like that. But the idea of hell amongst Jews that I've been reading about and different rabbis I've been reading about is a pretty interesting thing. So Gehinnom. This is a thing that's talked about all the time in rabbinic literature. It is basically translated to hell, but it's really more of like a Christian idea of purgatory. So basically, they maintain that souls are not tortured in hell forever. The longest that one is said to be in hell is for 11 months. They're basically like purged of their wickedness. And this is with the exception of heretics and extremely sinful Jews. They might be in there for longer. But ultimately, all people can then be purified and eventually ascend into Gan Eden, which is the Garden of Eden. So even Hitler himself might be in heaven.
Well, that's a take. I think he might meet the exception threshold.
I don't know how long he'll be in there, but apparently this applies to how Jews actually pray. So there is something known as like a mourning prayer for Jews. This is what's called known as the Mourner's Kaddish. And this is a Jewish prayer that they'll do for people that have passed away, but they don't do it for any longer than 11 months after death because they believe that at 11 months, 99% chance
you're through,
that you will be in the new Garden of Eden with Hashem.
That's a nice vibe.
Kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
And then furthermore, to be a righteous Gentile, so this would be people like us, these would be people that follow more or less the Noahide laws. So again, there's no clear, like, exact substrata that all Jews necessarily follow. The closest thing that I could find, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Noahide laws. So these are laws that were basically given to Noah. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. Do not deny God. That's one. I don't deny God. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not engage in sexual immortality.
What does that mean?
Do not blaspheme.
Edging? Is that what sexual immortality is? You mean immorality?
Damn it. Damn it.
I prefer your version. I'm trying to achieve sexual immortality, dude. Spraying forever. Brick till I die. And then some.
Sexual immorality. When you said, what does that mean? I was like, how do you not know what that means?
No, I know what it means.
Or sexual immortality. Don't do that either.
Yeah.
Don't blaspheme. This is a nice one. I actually like this one. Do not eat of a live animal. So no flesh taken from an animal while it's still alive. Looking at you, Chinese.
Oh, dude.
Sometimes you'll go over there in China and they're like eating like a frog that's half dead or something.
Yeah, they do that. They do that.
I'm sure other people do it also.
Is there any sushi that's kind of alive?
I don't know. I don't
like
think
if
so.
you're doing like an omakase, they ever hit you with like a fucking...
None that
I
I've
don't
ever
think
had.
so.
None that I've ever had.
I don't think I've eaten anything that's alive.
Which is a good rule because you don't really think about that.
I'm just kidding.
Wait, what? That's a thing that I've never really thought about. I was like, yeah, you should kill things before you eat them. I don't think you should eat them while they're alive.
I think that's fair.
Like on a moral basis. Like sometimes you see these videos from like a Chinese wet market where people are like eating a frog that's still jumping and you're like, whoa.
It's disgusting.
But it is disgusting to us, but I'm like, why? And I'm like, oh, I think it is a little bit
Well, it feels cruel because then you feel like a living thing is getting digested.
Exactly.
Which is like not a great vibe. Not that getting killed is fun, but there's,
I'd rather die than get eaten alive.
Correct.
And then the last one, establish courts and legal systems that ensure the obedience of these laws. So basically create a church or some type of temple court that people will then not steal or murder or deny God.
Seems lightly the most chill.
Right? You're kind of reading it. You're like, wait, no hell?
Yeah.
Follow these very basic rules?
Yeah.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah.
And again, there's not a very clear idea of what heaven is, but it's given to us here in rabbinic Talmudic ideas of what heaven is. The first compartment is basically like heaven in Jewish eschatology is described by rabbis, and it's a lot of it is pretty crazy. So it's like there's paradise, and then there's this double gate made of carbuncle. I don't even know what that is. I think it's like
Simon's partner.
it's a deep red almandine gemstone. Apparently it's beautiful. Get that for your girl when you propose.
I'm married, but yeah.
It's guarded by 6 100,000 shining angels. Like apparently this heaven thing is beautiful. Again, not mentioned in the Torah, but described by these rabbis. This is the part that I noted that I thought was quite funny. There's kind of like different compartments of heaven. There's a compartment for Jewish martyrs. The second is for those who drowned.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why.
Matthew Perry. Shout out to the king.
I think that's just them getting a place for black people. All right. Okay. That's racial. That's
Okay.
That's too far.
You want to talk about a wet market?
That's the equivalent of having like a dress code.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, we'll have a place for people who drowned.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. And then the third is for Rabban Yohan ben Zakkai and his disciples, which I feel like he must have
Just one of the digits, like
he must have written.
That's
this.
like when like a famous person buys a brick outside of a stadium. It's just like one of the.
The fourth is for those whom the cloud of glory carried off. The fifth is for penitence. The sixth is for
penitence.
I think people that have like paid penance.
Penance, yeah.
The sixth is for youths who have never sinned. So I think it's for like young children before the age of reason that die. That seems like a good one.
Yeah.
The seventh is for the poor who have lived decently and studied Torah. So again, okay. I don't think most Jews follow this. It's just from a specific subset of what
drowning is just so specific out of left.
And you got to look at it. I wonder
is there like a parting the seas like a sort of time?
I genuinely don't know. I wonder if it was written at a time where like there might have been a flood or something.
Maybe.
And they're like, and it's kind of contextualized through that. I don't know exactly. Again, this is found within the Talmud, I believe. And again, I don't know if there's multiple Talmuds or if it's just one Talmud. Jews, correct me, educate me. I don't know.
The guy who wrote it just owned a pool, you know, like a Raging Waters, and was like, it's fine. It doesn't matter if you go.
Well, you got an insurance thing.
Yeah, you're chill no matter what.
Yeah, they're like, this is going to be a fortune to insure. You're like, dude, they're going to go to heaven. They're like, wait a second. It's fine.
The wave pool.
That's more or less the idea of what happens on Jewish Judgment Day.
Okay, Jewish Judgment Day is probably the chillest of the three.
Yeah, and
they're all like these three are not surprisingly connected because they're all working off the same source material.
Exactly.
You know.
Now let's throw in a curveball.
Oh yeah.
What's up, people? We're gonna take a break really quick because I got to tell you about an amazing sponsor. This sponsor needs no introduction. You've seen the ads. You've heard us talk about it a million times, and I bet there's a big part of you, pun intended, that wants to try it. What am I talking about? Talking about Blue Chew. That's right. This is not your grandpa's blue pill. This is the one, the OG chewable tablet for better lovemaking. That's right. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients you'd find in like Viagra, Cialis, all this stuff, but at a fraction of the cost in a chewable form. That's right. This process is super simple. You go online, put in your information, and BlueChew.com will consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you will receive your prescription in just a few days. Easy, sent straight to your door. The best part, it's all done online. No doctor's office, no awkward combos, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. This is BlueChew.com. They always say first impressions are important, but what about lasting impressions? You know what I'm talking about. You go out, you meet someone, and you tell them, hey, I'm going to take a Blue Chew tablet, and I'm going to rock your world. Blue Chew wants the entire country rock hard. They told me that's the mission. They're not going to stop until every man is bricked up, like a brick house. You know what I'm talking about? Till every tent is pitched, till every rod is raised in this great, beautiful land known as USA. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. And actually, if you're listening to this, I have a special deal for you. For all the listeners of this program, you can try Blue Chew for free. That's right. If you use our promo code GAGNON, that's GAGNON, which is a funny promo code for a product called Blue Chew. Use the promo code GAGNON at checkout. Just pay $5 in shipping. That's like a cup of coffee. It's nothing. That's BlueChew.com with the promo code GAGNON, GAGNON, and receive your first month for free. That's right. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And thank you so much to Blue Chew for sponsoring this amazing broadcast. Now let's get back to the show. Hinduism.
Okay.
I don't know anything about Hinduism.
Not either, aside from that they don't like eating cows.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which is very different than Abrahamic religions. We love cows.
We like eating them.
We eat them all the time.
Yes, we do.
So Hinduism is very interesting. So you got to think, Judgment Day in Hinduism. What does that even look like
if you're not going to die?
Think about it, right? All of a sudden, everything that we understand about Abrahamic monotheistic religions kind of falls apart once you think about it.
That's right. They got a bunch of gods.
Crazy.
With a bunch of arms.
Think about it, dude. Yeah. So the whole thing gets wild. And Hindus, very beautifully, actually, I have a ton of respect for how the Hindu faith understands cosmology time and space. I think this is a thing that the Hindus like nailed from a long time ago. Apparently the Hindu word for geography basically literally translates from like Sanskrit to mean round earth.
Whoa.
And this is thousands of years old. Like some say that Hinduism, with the exception of maybe Zoroastrianism, is like one of the oldest faiths. So predating, you know, Islam, predating Christianity. Again, I'm sure people probably dispute this, but this is just kind of from the casual research that I've done. Again, Hinduism is not one singular monolithic thing. There's very many subsets. People believe different things within it. Jainism is a part of it. There's a ton of different types of subsets of Hinduism. Not all Hindus believe the same exact thing. Some people would even say, according to one of my Hindu friends that I spoke with, Hinduism isn't even necessarily religion. It is a collection of ideas and philosophies that lead people to live their best, most enlightened life.
It's a good pitch.
Right? So it's like
that.
So I don't even know if there's a specific one way to do Hinduism. I think it could just be a collection of ideas that then inform people to live their dharmic duty, which we will discuss and get into. I would just kind of like to start by talking about like different texts that Hindus use to kind of inform their faith. Again, for anyone that's not familiar, I'm sure most people are, Hinduism is very common in India. This is where you get the name India. You kind of have the Hindustan, you have the Indus River Valley, you kind of switch around some letters and you get the Hindus that are of this place. It is synonymous with the landmass of Southeast Asia.
And these days, it's also become a huge part of the politics with like Hindu nationalism and the, you know.
Beyond. It is a major part. What Hindus typically, again, there's no specific which way, but generally speaking, when you talk about texts that Hindus are going to read, some of the biggest things that you might be aware of are like the Vedic texts, the Mahabharata. So the Mahabharata is, again, Maha meaning great, Bharata,
Cheese.
Yes, it is Bharata. It is cheese. Great Indian tale or great Indian story. This is the longest poem ever written. It's thousands of pages. It's like unthinkably long. You've heard of the Bhagavad Gita?
Yes, I have.
I
have a copy.
It's within the Mahabharata. That's how long this story is. That one of the greatest epic poems is a subset, is the last tale of this greater thing. Which again, these things all sort of inform what it means to be Hindu and sort of tell us tales and stories and lore about the different gods that Hindus honor and worship. Another one is Ramayana, which is another text that very many people are familiar with. The Vedic text, the Vedas, is a very common thing. And then the one that we're mostly going to be talking about when it comes to end times is what's known as the Purana, or the Puranas. And there's very many types of Puranas. They come a little bit later in the timeline from some of these Vedic texts. So I just want to start with time. I think this would actually be a helpful way to contextualize what we're talking about, because the way that Hindus look at time is very different than how Abrahamic religions look at time. So
is that why they're always late?
IST. That's what it is, dude. India Standard Time. You know what I'm saying? The time is different for them. It's fine. So this is a guy, by the way, I just want to point out, when listening to a lot of these gurus, I've listened to very many of them. I've researched them. I have a ton of respect for them. This guy happens to have what's known as an Indian accent. Okay.
So I was going to say, is that his name?
We're going to put the camera on you. Okay. And just out of respect for him and his religion and his faith, I would like you to not smile or laugh.
Okay. Don't set it up like that. That's unfair.
No, well, I just want to be respectful for the billions of people, the 1.4 billion people that currently live in India, and the probably billion of people that actually agree with this man and study Hinduism and respect it as their main faith. So just be respectful while we hear about Hindus' understanding of time.
You're going to get your mind blown in 90 seconds by understanding how Hinduism views and measures time. Here's the tea. Firstly, instead of taking seconds, we have gone even more microscopic, and our smallest units of time are called paramanu or truti. Our day in our lives is called a tithi, and 15 tithis make a paksha, which is a fortnight.
Stop, dude. No, keep going. I'm sorry. I'm listening.
Can you stop?
And
just be respectful.
I am being respectful of the Gen Z god Fortnite.
It was funny that he said
15 titties is crazy, dude.
Yeah,
15. Someone's got cancer. That's okay. Respect and love.
Titties is
15 titties. I like this guy. Let's do it.
Titties was a little funny.
Yeah.
Now, he's going to say something here in a sec. Okay, he's going to say something known as a yug. This is spelled Y-U-G-A. This is important for our discussion, so just clock it when he says it, all right? That's the one you got to hold on to.
Any such pakshas make masas, which are month, which eventually make a varsha, a year. 432,000 such years are called a Kali Yuga, which is where we're right now, and there are 3 more yugas which are much longer multiples of this Kali Yuga, called as the Dwapara Yuga, the Treta Yuga, and the Satya Yuga. These 4 yugas together make a Mahayuga or a Chatur Yuga, and 71 such Mahayugas make a Manvantara ruled by one guy named as Manu, who's the first being of that particular phase in time. 14 Manvantaras make one day in the life of a Brahma, who's the architect of a universe, and one Brahma lives for 100 Brahma years, which is inconceivable for us. Interestingly, the life of one Brahma is contained in the breath of a Mahavishnu, who when he inhales and exhales creates and destroys thousands of multiverses. And this lifespan of a mega universe is 311,040 trillion human years. Basically, we figured out that time is cyclical long before anybody else, and this time dimension is something we call Shiv. So if you want to know more about it, hit that follow button.
That shit makes so much more sense to me than so many other religions.
Crazy, right?
Like, because I remember having this experience one time where I was having a sturdy little
mushrooms.
acid trip.
Okay.
I was on acid at the time.
This is how it happens.
And it was like,
and we're all the Beatles. Everyone's the Beatles.
No, it was like I felt like I was part of this big being that was like running, and it was like I was a part of the earth, and the earth was part of the universe, and the universe was all part of this one larger being that also was like the shape of a human that was in a part of another thing, and that it was just like stacking of all these different levels of multitudes, which I think is what he was saying after we got through the titty part.
So that's basically the basis of...
And I knew none of that going into this acid trip.
But now you do.
Yeah.
So this is, again, the basis for understanding Hindu time. Mm-hmm. So the way that they interpret time is very specific. And one of the things that he mentioned that I think is important to consider is what's known as a yug. So it's spelled yuga. I think in plural it's yugas. And then if you're just speaking about one, it's yug. So there's something known as a chatur yug. And this is 4.3 million years. Basically, the way that Hindus understand time and the universe to work is that every subsequent yug decreases by 1/4. So they love math.
That I know, brother.
Love math. Satya Yuga, this is 1.7 million years. Treta Yuga, this is 1.2 million years. Dvapara Yuga, this is 800,000 years. And then the Kali Yuga. Now, each one of these yugs basically descends into moral degeneracy. Things get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. Can you guess which yuga we're in now?
Are we in the Kali Yuga?
We're in the Kali Yuga.
Kali. So they're saying this is like the worst of times because everyone's just
the yugs
smashing and being mean.
Again, the way that they describe it is we're in the time of the Kali Yuga. Now, this is named after not the goddess Kali, but the demon Kali.
Damn, dude.
So this is kind of all started when Krishna left Earth at 31,000 BC. Each person has seen a progressive decline in morality to the point that in the Kali Yuga, people are quarreling and hypocrisy is the norm. This is cyclical. So again, each kalpa is 4.3 billion years. And ultimately, as the yugas kind of progress, things get more and more degenerate. So
hypocrisy definitely is the norm. I just always, when you have like some understanding of history, it's hard to be like, this is the most immoral people have been. Because there are times when people thought they were being like the most high-minded, period of Americans thinking they were moral included fucking slavery, which is the most immoral thing that you could do.
But just remember, this yuga is for 400,000 years.
Right.
So they're saying that we've been in this phase for a long time.
Okay, so just back in the day, like pre-writing, people were just hella chill.
So we don't know exactly where we are in the yuga. We just know that it's 400,000 years long.
Yeah.
So we might be in the middle of it. It might be somewhat close. We can't say for certain. But again, what we can say is that for this time, as it's told in the Vishnu Purana, this is the Purana about Vishnu, written 100 BC, social status depends not on your accomplishments, but on the ownership of property. Wealth is now the source of virtue. Passion and luxury are the sole bonds between spouses. Falsity, lying are the conditions of success in life. Sexuality is the sole source of human enjoyment. Religion and superficial and empty ritual is confused with spirituality. From the Vishnu Purana. Written 100,000, 1,000 BC, or 100 BC.
Yeah, I mean, that's a decent description.
So, Basically, we will see that there is an infliction of death upon women and children, and rulers will rise and fall from power quickly. Undisciplined barbarians will receive the support of rulers, and will be in a time of disarray. And then we have the Kalki. The Kalki is a fascinating figure in Hindu religion. So at this time of evil, there's no more dharma on earth. Again, dharma is basically our duty as people. This is what each person individually is on the path to do. So a lion's dharma is to go rule the pride, to support its family, to eat, to reproduce.
June.
The human's dharma is, again, to live a pious life, to follow the rules of the Brahma, to read the Vedas, and to do whatever it is in your personal life that is most important, that then brings the most peace and prosperity amongst the people on earth, is how I understand it. There will be a time when there is no more dharma. People are not living their dharmic duty, and basically the world is in disarray. And then we will have the Kalki. This is the 10th and final incarnation of Vishnu, known as the Kalki, that will appear on a white horse. He will amass an army of those few but pious souls remaining. These, together with all the incarnations of the Godheads, all the avatars, which have appeared throughout human history, will destroy all the evil spirits and sins of the world. At the end, basically, all the suns will then come around the earth. Kalki will amass an army to establish righteousness, and they will basically leave the minds of the people, quote, as pure as crystal. Those left transformed by virtue will be the new seeds for a higher form of humanity, and humanity will then begin again, entering back into the first Yug, the Satya Yug, which will last 1.7 billion years.
So much as you continuously are reincarnated, humanity goes through its own life cycle.
Nothing is constant.
That then reincarnates.
There is no stagnation. There is just death and rebirth. So as all people, again, are on this wandering phase, attempting to achieve nirvana by going through their basically karmic deeds, their good and bad things that they do, the universe is effectively doing the same thing. And we go from the Kali Yuga, which is bad, back to the Satya Yuga, which is good, and then we have a slow decay of the universe once again.
Damn.
Wild, right?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, I don't know that it's right, but if we're shopping around right now, I'm like, I see the trend. I see what they're getting at.
All things are going through death and rebirth. That's all it is. So overall, in the Hindu Sanatana Dharma, shows us that each person, based on his or her free will, if pursuing a life of proper dharma, again, one's true purpose, can alter his or her current life and influence the future destiny of their life. Our karma is our actions and deeds on earth, which will basically decide our future destiny. We hope to live as dharmic of a life as possible and to essentially attain nirvana, also known as moksha, also known as mukti. And this is a state of no more births, where they essentially merge with the universe, with God, with Brahma, and with infinity. We ultimately can escape what's known as, we'll ultimately escape what is known as samsara. This is known as the Sanskrit word for wandering. This is the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that people colloquially call
It's
reincarnation.
insane. I have a friend who works at a tech company called Samsara, which is a wild name for a company that sells software. To like help salespeople or whatever they do.
It's a little deep, right?
Yeah, it's also kind of dark. It's a dark connotation.
Well, more or less. I think we're ascribing a moralism to this idea of wandering,
Yes.
which I don't think it necessarily is the case. I just think it is such that all things are basically going through these cycles, attempting to achieve nirvana, and then ultimately once you do, and once you have mukti, then you are now out of the cycle of samsara.
I see.
But many people might go through samsara for many millennia, many epochs.
Have you read the book Siddhartha by Herman Hesse? Oh, I love it. It's one of my favorite books, and it starts with a guy he's a Brahmin, and his whole thing is he's trying to achieve nirvana through doing all the things that you're supposed to as someone who follows that tradition.
When you say Brahmin, you mean like a high priestly caste.
Yes, exactly. And then, he's the son of a Brahmin. Then he becomes I forget the name of the caste, but it's like these people who wander the forest. And they that's a whole group. Then he goes and he tries to become a Buddhist. Then he says, oh, screw all this. And he becomes rich. He becomes a merchant and he learns from having sex and getting drunk and doing all these things. And then he goes, you know what, screw that. And then he goes and he just lives with one guy and he learns from the river. And then what he realizes is that I've been focused on trying to achieve nirvana by following a series of different dogmas. And actually I needed to learn from every single thing all at once and not just follow teachers or teachings, but live all these things. And it's my cumulative experience that has actually helped me get to nirvana. Wow. It's a good book, and it's short.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I like short.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds awesome. I would read that.
It's
But
great.
It really does make sense, though. Once you understand the cyclical nature of time within Hinduism, then you can't really base Hinduism based off the time that we use. Like, they're looking at things in terms of like millennia and millennia, and then like Brahma lives, and then the Brahma ultimately is then gone because he's living within the breath of a Vishnu. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
It's refreshing to. This is why this is really cool, learning from about all these different religions at once. It's kind of refreshing because you get stuck in this one way of thinking about things, and then you're like, oh, we weren't even doing time on this scale.
Completely
We weren't
different.
even doing multiverses on this scale.
what is interesting is, again, we have the same idea of a Messiah, the Kalki, that comes back.
Yeah.
What's interesting also is that the Kalki is an
A
iteration.
white horse in 2024 is crazy, though. Some dude's like, I'm here to lead you on a horse. You're like, stop, dude.
He's also potentially
Was this
blue.
the opening
He's
ceremony?
potentially blue.
Olympics.
So, yeah, might be the,
Olympic
might
guy,
be the
dude?
Olympic
Is it
guy.
that little Olympic two-ink?
So Vishnu, if I understand correctly, is always depicted as blue because in one of the Vedic texts, he's described as being of the sky. So they describe him as being of the sky and the sea. And so some people are like, oh, maybe he's white like a cloud. And other people are like, maybe he's blue like the sea and the sky. So that's why he's always depicted as blue. So if you ever look at like Indian art and you see a blue god, you can trust that that's
Vishnu.
likely Vishnu or a different iteration of Vishnu's avatar, like Rama or like, Kalki.
Okay.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So again, this is the cyclical nature of how Hindus understand time, which to me, I find very, very fascinating. You can't really understand Hinduism without understanding how they look at time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
A lot of respect. I actually learned a lot, and I was like, oh, this is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the last...
Will you hand me one more beer?
I would love to.
Uh-huh.
The last
final
faith,
one.
the final faith that we're going to discuss, which again, there's a lot of faiths. We could look at Scientology, but I'm also terrified of them. Which also Scientology stuff wasn't that crazy. Mormonism. What an interesting thing about Mormonism is the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
These are people that believe we are in the latter days. It's kind of cool.
Makes sense.
So baked into the faith is sort of this idea of end times. But nothing like that crazy. You know what I mean? It's not like that wild.
Right.
But there is a part of them that I think that goes to like a celestial body with God. Where basically you're on like a different celestial plane.
Yeah.
But also after you read all this stuff, you're like, that's not that crazy. Like Christians, like evangelicals like to look at Mormonism and be like, these guys are crazy.
It's
like,
hard. It's hard to go, no, this dragon is correct, and then be like, but you think that?
So I'm saying, dude, just live a holy, pious life. Again, when we talked about monotheism
That's why I
before,
like learning from all of it and then boiling it down to like what actually makes sense. And
I'm just like doing shrooms sometimes and chilling with the
dude.
boys.
Vibing,
That's
being a good person,
That's where it all comes down
giving
to.
it a shot, living in the moment.
So maybe you'll like this one.
I might.
Buddhism.
Yeah.
Buddhism is a big one. So this is,
Yeah.
again, I include in the top 5 because a huge portion of China is obviously Buddhist. I didn't know what the differences between Buddhism and Hinduism were. This was kind of lost on me. I was like, I don't know what it is. And again, I still don't really know. I'm not a scholar in Eastern religions. If you're interested in getting a real answer, I recommend you chat GPT it or look it up yourself. I don't know. What I understand is that one of the main differences is that Hinduism is a belief amongst gods. It's a polytheistic religion. So they actually have what's known almost as like a trinity, which is actually quite interesting. So you have the Brahma, which is the creator. And then you have Vishnu, which is the preserver. This is, again, the avatar of Kalki that we're talking about comes from Vishnu. This is the preserver. And then you have Shiva, which is the destroyer. And again, all these things sort of work in balance. So you have the creator, you have the destroyer, then you have the preserver, which then, helps things on its way. But again, nothing is perfectly stagnant. It is in a constant cycle. Pretty interesting. Buddhism doesn't necessarily have one central godhead at the core of its faith. So it doesn't really believe that there is one God necessarily. It believes in a universal oneness of all things that are connected, and that we are a part of this greater message of what it means to be divine, is how I understand it. Again, I may be wrong, but that's like one of the main points of contention is the monotheistic thing. Whereas again, the Buddhist tradition is not.
It's not as God-centric.
It's not monotheistic.
Like,
It's not polytheistic. It's what they would consider monist.
Yeah.
or monistic, which again is this idea that, you know, God is the whole thing and that we're all part of the universe and we're a part of God. And again, I understand that Hindus believe that God resides within us, that we are also God. So again, I might not be getting this perfect, but I do understand that Hinduism and Buddhism have major distinctions.
Yep.
So let's go on. We're talking again about eschatology. This is the end times of all the faiths. So Buddhism believes in cycles in which lifespans of human beings change according to human nature. So according to the Buddha, this is what is prophesied, is that, again, our society will begin to decay, will have erosion. In what's a text known as the Kakavita Sutta, the Buddha explains the relationship between life and the behavior of human beings. Basically, he says that unskilled behavior was unknown among the human race. So, as a result, people back in the day lived immensely long times. 80,000 years some people would live. But there's a time in the future where people won't live very long, and time spans of life will slowly decrease until eventually some people are only living 10 years, and they'll reach sexual maturity at 5 years old.
Jesus.
What?
I mean, that's wild.
Wait, what? Wait,
That's wild.
what was your point?
You're the Catholic.
Whoa, dude, wait. Are you trying to?
No.
Are you happy about it?
No. Are you?
Of course not. This is the
That's
degeneracy of
crazy.
humankind. I
It's
don't
not
like this.
good.
I like it. I wish it was. I wish it was
remember getting
later.
bricked very young.
I wish it was later.
Yeah, I agree.
I wish we could go back to time spans being 80,000 years and people have reached sexual maturity at a young age of 20,000 years.
I would love that. 20,000 years to just focus on your grind and not even have to spray.
Exactly.
That would be awesome.
Don't even get bricky until like 10,000 years.
That would be sick.
10,000 years
Dude,
old. You catch your first
10,000
break.
years to set up my drop shipping business.
Think about it.
Yeah.
If you're a loser in 80,000 years
Dude,
of time, you're a real
You're
loser.
a fucking idiot.
So time is slowly going to decay. People are going to get worse off. Dharma will no longer exist on earth. And we will have basically a Messiah. Again, I don't want to call it that because that's not what they call it within this faith, but that's how we can understand it as people that grew up in the West that are more familiar with Abrahamic traditions. And this is a Buddha. This is a new Buddha. I remember the Buddha that we all talk about, that we all
goofing.
that we all know and love.
Yeah.
That's the OG Buddha. This is what's known as the Maitreya. This is the new Buddha. So basically, the Buddha describes that his teachings will dissolve and they'll disappear within 5,000 years of his passing. So that'll come around 4600 AD. At this time, the knowledge of Dharma will be lost. The last of his relics will be gathered and cremated, and there will be no one in the new era that will be doing their dharmic duty. This will then be the era that the Buddha Maitreya will come on. Maitreya. The Buddha Maitreya will come on. In this period, prior to the Maitreya, there will be greed, lust, poverty, ill will, violence, murder, impiety, physical weakness, sexual depravity, and social collapse. And even the Buddha himself will be forgotten. But then we will have a golden age. The Maitreya is then foretold to be born into the city of Ketumati. This is in present-day Benares. This is in Uttar Pradesh in India. Basically, people will then worship this Buddha and they will come to become a follower. I shouldn't say worship. I don't know if they worship the Buddha. I think they will become a follower of the wisdom of the Buddha.
Yeah, they're more into following, I feel like.
At this time, he will teach humanity the 10 virtuous deeds. Pretty good. Sounds like a 10 Commandments situation. The 10 virtuous and non-virtuous deeds are perfect, basically, inversions of each other or foils of each other. So the non-virtuous deeds would be killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, divisive speech, abusive speech, idle speech, covetous, harmful intent, covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong views. Last one's a little vague, but we'll roll with it.
Yeah.
The virtuous deeds are basically the exact inverse of this. So if killing is obviously bad, then protecting those that are attempted to be killed or not killing would then be seen as virtuous. This is then what will be brought upon by this new Messiah type figure. According to the Khans, which is a Buddhist scripture, the Lord replied, Maitreya, the best of men, will then leave the Tusita heavens and go for his last rebirth. As soon as he is born, he will walk up 7 steps where he puts down his feet. A jewel or a lotus will spring up. He will raise his eyes to the 10 directions and will speak these words. This is my last birth. There will be no rebirth after this one. Never will I come back here, but all pure I shall win nirvana. This is the last Buddha. This is the last one that'll come and basically save humanity. Basically reciting, he's currently reciting in Tushita, which is basically like a heaven of sorts that Buddhists believe. There's multiple different kind of places, and that's where this new Buddha will basically be. This new Buddha will achieve complete enlightenment, will follow reawakening, and will bring back the timeless teaching of Dharma to this plane.
So it's not like a Judgment Day situation. It's not like, hey, people who don't get it are getting banished to hell or whatever. It's more like, hey, this is it. Well, I'm achieving nirvana.
What's interesting is that, again, Buddhists still have the same exact idea of samsara, where there is a wandering. So they do believe in sort of this idea of reincarnation, but it's not exactly the same way that Hindus believe it, which is really interesting. So there is a judgment day in Buddhism. There is an apocalypse, which is quite interesting. Ultimately, the Buddha describes the fate of the world in an apocalypse that will be characterized by the consequent appearance of 7 suns in the sky. This is known as the Sermon of 7 Suns. Each is causing progressive ruin until the earth is destroyed. So, excuse me. This is from a Buddhist scripture. All things are impermanent. All aspects of existence are unstable and non-eternal. Beings will become so weary and disgusted with the constituent things that they will seek emancipation from them more quickly. There will come a season, O monks, when after 100 or 1,000 years rains will cease, all seedlings, all vegetation, all plants, grasses, and trees will dry up and cease to be. There comes another season after a great lapse of time where a second sun will appear. Now all brooks and ponds will dry up, vanish, and cease to be. Basically goes on through the canon that each progressive sun will then do another great calamity. This is, again, similar to Revelation, where we see the different bowls.
I was going to say new suns, rains and droughts.
It's interesting. And each new thing, which, again, 7 is a very common number that we see in, Christianity, that we see in Judaism. I mean, we see it all over. 7 suns will come up. The 3rd sun dries up the Ganges. The 4th will dry up the Great Lakes. The 5th will dry up the oceans. And then finally, the final suns will appear. The 6th sun will bake the earth, even as a pot is baked by a potter. All the mountains will reek and send up clouds of smoke. And then the 7th sun will appear and set the earth ablaze with fire until it becomes one mass of flame. The mountains will be consumed. A spark will be carried into the winds and go to the worlds of the gods. Thus, monks, all things will burn, perish, and exist no more except those who have seen the path. The sermon basically consumes the planet getting engulfed by an inferno.
Except for those who see the path.
Precisely. But from what I understand, I think that it's possible. And again, I'm not
big if you're not in our club, you're screwed vibe for everybody.
But I don't know if it's finite. Again, this is what I'm not sure about. So Buddhist reincarnation is interesting because you basically go up and down a ladder. And it seems like Hinduism has versions of this. Again, I'm a little bit out of school right now. I don't know exactly the difference, but this is just based off of my brief reading here. Buddhist reincarnation kind of goes through different steps of a ladder. So at the bottom, you have hell. So Buddhists actually have hell, whereas I think Hindus we exist ultimately in this plane of existence, and there's many multiverses. Mm-hmm. Whereas Buddhists, we exist on this plane, but we also exist in a spiritual plane. And depending on where you are in your sort of karmic debt, you kind of move up and down from this plane to a heavenly plane to a hellish plane.
Yeah.
Whereas in Hinduism,
it can happen while you're living, and suffering is life is the other Buddhist thing.
Exactly. But within Hinduism, I don't think that's the case. I think in Hinduism,
life is suffering. But yeah.
In Hinduism, I think you're basically looking at one specific plane of existence within a series of multiverses, but you're going to bounce in and out of different multiverses, different spaces, all within the time span that you're alive. So look at it this way. Buddhist reincarnation, you have hell at the bottom. This is if you lived an unjust life, you haven't been pursuing your dharma, your karma is bad. You could descend into hell, but then after a time span in hell is undisclosed, you could become an animal. Again, on Earth, maybe in this plane or in a multidimensional plane. And then you become a ghost. This is again described in Buddhism known as a gaki. And then you become a fighting spirit. This is, again, a spirit that I think is doing like work and putting yourself in danger in the spiritual realm. This is known as Ashura. And then you become a human being. And then you can become a heavenly being. Heavenly being is at the top. And I think you can kind of move up and down this ladder. And I think that is another major issue or a major piece that makes Buddhism specifically different from Hinduism. So at the end of this time, where there's this apocalypse and this earth is destroyed, I don't know if there's now a multiverse or different earths that then we will populate as human beings, or if we then will just go from heavenly beings to fighting spirits to ghosts to hell, and then we'll just exist in a spiritual realm, kind of going up and down that ladder. I'm not sure exactly. If there's any Buddhists listening, I would love to know.
Let us know. Yeah, all the Buddhists on YouTube hanging. I think that the other thing is, as we discussed, there's also the secular scientific view, which probably also includes a hot sun drying a bunch of things up and everyone being punished for their sins, which in this case would be things that led to global warming or whatever.
And this is where it's so interesting to me, because all of these things are written 2,000 years ago.
Way earlier, yeah.
And they're saying that the sun heats up the earth and we all die?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty spooky.
And that we're all fucking and sucking and shit.
And we're all immoral.
Which we are.
Which is completely true. Or that Muhammad, praise be upon him, says that people are competing over big buildings. I mean, there's just a lot of prophecies from a lot of different religions that make you kind of sit there and go, huh.
That's not nothing. Again,
maybe they got lucky, or maybe.
But so did The Simpsons.
There's something going on. Who knows?
But so did The Simpsons.
The Simpsons,
as well.
true.
Sometimes,
but maybe they know something.
Sometimes science fiction and sometimes fiction. I'm not saying it's all fiction. Peace be upon everyone. is also prophetic, because the human brain is capable of insight into potential futures.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily correct or not, but you can deduce possibilities based on the artistic process of like envisioning what could happen. Also possible.
And it's possible that they all happen. Maybe a Messiah comes, tricks the Jews and the Christians.
If the Messiah comes down and you're having a fap, you're like, oh, Jesus.
Oh, I'm so embarrassed.
God damn it, dude.
Well, that's going to happen
Hey,
to someone.
you guys are right. Hey, y'all were right. Hey.
And then maybe the Dajjal is killed.
Yeah.
All the Christians and Jews go, oh, wait a second. We're actually waiting for the actual Christ. Isa ibn Miriam comes down.
Yeah.
And then all the Jews and Christians go, oh, that's the guy we met.
That's the guy.
He's also Kalki, the 10th incarnation of Vishnu.
Oh.
Destroys all the wickedness. Oh. And then is also Maitreya, the Buddhist Messiah. Maitreya. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, to be honest. But maybe that one, Isa, the Messiah of the Jews, the second returning of Christ, Kalki, and Maitreya are all the same.
It's possible.
And then the universe is reborn.
You heard it here first.
I don't know. That's a little far-fetched to tie them all together, but maybe.
It's possible.
Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, there's an innate desire to tie them all together, because if you could do that, if you could unify it,
wait, did I just figure all
then
this
you're really
shit out?
onto something. And you know what's interesting? It's what every one of these religions is trying to do. Like
Did I just
like
start
that's why Islam is like, no, you're right. You know, Hinduism is like, no, you're right. But
Yeah.
we're the unifying theory. We're going to take that and add it on top.
It is
So if
crazy
you
that
can-
they all kind of tie together, where it's like, again, not literally tying together, but just that there's so much overlap in terms of like the religions. For example, the Abrahamic religions are very clear
Yeah.
overlap.
Yeah.
And then you have Hinduism that's actually like, oh, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he is actually an avatar of Vishnu.
And there's overlaps with random people who have a trip.
Yeah.
And I think that what it is there, you know, we can only experience our dimension and the way that we perceive things, but every once in a while we're capable of tapping into something else. And when we describe it, we're talking about a lot of the same things, and it gets very grandiose and it's very insightful, and we're like, holy shit, there's some other stuff going on. But then people get very dogmatic about then the description and saying, this is exactly what's right. This is exactly what's going on, and we have to follow this. And really no one is perfectly capable of describing this window into another dimension that we don't really know what's going on, but we're all kind of talking about something that we've all seen glimpses of.
Perhaps. All this to say, I think certainly in my description of this, I probably oversimplified a lot of stuff. I probably reduced entire books and, you know, religious passages down to single sentences or just completely misquoted stuff, it's very possible a lot of what I've discussed today is erroneous. That's not my intention. I'm trying to do my best to go through every eschatological record of every religion and try to understand it as well as I can. So if I misquoted something or if I didn't get something completely right, my bad. Please comment, let me know. Tell me if I can flesh out the idea to understand it better. Maybe I'll do a correction video where I describe and go through all the things I actually missed in this one, if people want it.
And
furthermore,
I am sorry.
I don't believe you. I think you meant everything you said. But secondly, I hope this inspires people to want to learn more. I'm fascinated by the religions of the world. I think it's really fun to learn about. So if there's other people that, listen to this and they're like, wait a second, what's going on with Hinduism? I didn't know anything about Hinduism. I didn't know what they believed. I didn't know what they read. I just get so stuck in kind of like what I was raised in. I just assume everyone knows that you can actually understand people and how they operate in the world a lot better by understanding like, oh, they're, operating with this karmic idea. Or, oh, these people are waiting for the return of, of Jesus Christ also. Like, I just think it really fleshes out our time on earth while we're here. Because that's one thing that's guaranteed. We're going to be here for a little bit and we're eventually going to die. Every religion's pretty solid on that. Where we go after, we'll see.
And there's so much emphasis on whether or not this or that thing is right, when honestly it's like, that's all very interesting. You know, like when you take the time to learn about someone, you're like, oh, this is fascinating. Who knows? But it's a very unique insight into questions that we don't know the answer to.
Exactly right. So this has been every major religion's eschatological record, the end time prophecies of every major religion. Billions of people on earth and billions of people that have come before and that will come after have been researching these documents. They believe these things and they know them and hold them to be true in their hearts. And maybe one day, inshallah, God willing, Baruch Hashem, we'll all know. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. And furthermore, I have an actual episode coming out this week, Thursday of this week, I believe, with my dear friend, Dr. Jeremy Hutland. There were books that were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls that were not canonized into what would be considered the Christian Hebrew Bible.
Yeah, that's right. The Book of Enoch. Enoch is a very minor character in the Bible. The mysterious thing about him is it says Enoch walked with God and he was no more because God took him. So he's one of two people in the Hebrew Bible who don't seem to die a normal death. You can imagine that if you want to write a work in someone else's name, why not pick a person who was taken alive to heaven and could tell what he's seen? So this is why you have multiple texts penned in the name of Enoch. Enoch lived before Noah and the flood. So how would his books have survived? Isn't it a matter of telephone? That's an old book. What are the odds? We've got the words and only the words that Enoch said. So what First Enoch's really known for is his story of what went wrong on earth. The more familiar story is the story of the garden with Adam and Eve. Enoch doesn't have that story. In Enoch's story, they're called the Watchers, which means watching in the sense of being always awake. The vigilant ones decide that they want to descend and take human women as wives, and they procreate with them. Their offspring are the giants, and the giants start devouring the earth. That's what elicits the flood. But after the flood, it destroys the giant bodies, but their spirits would continue to roam the earth as evil spirits.
I'm curious about the book of Revelation. There's all sorts of crazy visions and prophecies of end times.
Yeah, so when God comes to earth, it says the people were terrified because they just saw the fire, they heard the voice, they were scared to death. God's a consuming fire.
He is a theological professor at Yale. He studies specifically the Hebrew Bible as well as the Christian Bible. He knows all about the Torah. He speaks Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew. Fascinating guy. He breaks down a bunch of books that are not included in the Bible. We don't really talk a ton about end times. We do talk about Revelation. We talk about the book of Enoch. We talk about the book of Daniel and Ezekiel and crazy things in the Bible, mistranslations, and who really got it right. Is it the Catholics or the Protestants? All of that and more is explained in my episode with Dr. Jeremy Hutland, which if you're listening to this, in a couple weeks, it's already out. You can click on it right here. And if you are listening to this right when it drops, then it'll be out on Thursday. Thank you guys so much. And Joey, you learned something today.
I did.
You're leaving this tent a little less dumb than you came in.
Yeah.
Thank God.
That's really exciting.
Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cheers.